Hello, everyone, and welcome to another small screen Star Wars. As always, I am Julian Mush. I'm joined by Rachel Wilkinson.
Hello.
And we are going to be talking about today Ahsoka Season 1, Episode 4, Part 4, Fallen Jedi. And that title has lots of meanings this week, so we'll get into that in a little bit. But first, I guess I'll quickly apologize for my audio quality last week. What a crap show it was for me. Trying to record this in the car. That night there was a bear sighting. I think I mentioned that. I couldn't for the life of me figure out how to my girlfriend's computer for it to read the microphone. We thought we had it figured out,
right?
And then in post production, I was like, guess not. But it's what's the audio version of legible? Whatever that word is. I think people understood what we were trying to say.
Yeah.
Luckily, it was the shortest episode of the season so far. And I have watched it now 3 times because my girlfriend falls asleep every single time we watch the show. So we're going to watch this one again next week, and it'll be my 3rd time watching that one. And then I've watched the second episode 4 times now because she fell asleep watching that twice.
That's really funny.
So I've now seen this show lots and lots of times. So I'm ready to dive into it and really just take it all apart for this 4th episode, which is a great one, by the way. Do you agree
really
with that?
Good. Yes. Super good. Lots of cool stuff happens.
Lots of really cool stuff. Surprisingly, though, funny enough, coming in at only like 3 minutes longer than last week's episode.
It felt longer.
But
That's
it
weird.
felt longer. Yes,
it felt way
totally
longer,
agree.
yeah. Interesting. I didn't even notice that it was,
Yeah.
quote unquote short. That's funny.
People were really giving the last week's episode a hard time for its length. People that I like, Eckhart's Ladder on YouTube and others, people talking about how it just wasn't doing, and it's just a larger Star Wars problem. These 30-minute episodes just don't give you enough time to really sink your teeth into it. It feels like, especially if they're these one-off episodes as a part of a larger whole. So, especially if that larger whole is the whole season, and not like a 3-episode arc like Andor was doing, or even Rebels and Clone Wars were doing. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, this episode is similar in the sense that it's just as short, basically, but somehow packs a lot more in. And that's including like 3 separate lightsaber duels. So there's lots to unpack here. We'll get into that in just a second. A little bit of housekeeping before we get into it, I guess. We are live again today on YouTube and Twitch. You can find us there at Tower Babblecast on Twitch. It's a Tower of Babel cast on YouTube. I really got to figure out how to change that. I don't know how. So if anyone knows how, I think you need to have some sort of minimum amount of subscribers. So if you're not a subscriber to our YouTube channel, go and subscribe to our YouTube channel so I can change the name.
I might not even be a subscriber, so
Thanks a lot. Part of the problem here, Rachel.
I don't know. I stopped watching YouTube a long time ago, but
really, I can't. I literally after the last night after watching Ahsoka, I was just on YouTube nonstop watching.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I haven't even seen the because of the way we do this now and the way that they premiere these episodes on Tuesday nights, which, by the way, I feel like I've been championing this for a long time. The idea of like, if we're gonna do these event series, let's drop them. Let's premiere these episodes at a reasonable time.
At a proper time. Yeah, it makes so much more sense.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's I'm a big fan of that, and it's a day early, which means that like the people who are watching it on Wednesday anyway, they don't notice any different, and then we get to kind of sink our teeth in early on Tuesday. And I'm appreciative. Was it 9 p.m. Eastern? I think that they premiere. Does that sound right?
Yes. Or no. Yes. I'm thinking it's 8. Yeah, 9 and then 8 Central.
Yeah.
And 6 Pacific.
Right. Remember those commercials where you used to like
9/8 Central.
9/8 Central.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. That's right. Yeah. Because we were in that time zone. It was always funny because it was. I feel like if you didn't know what they were talking about, be like, "What do you mean 2 numbers?" And then the word "central." That's so weird. But anyway, in this world of internet, it doesn't really matter. But it's appreciated. But what I'm saying is, it doesn't give Screen Crush enough time to do their recaps, which is fine because I don't need to steal all of their material.
See, that's what I was waiting for when I had to do the show notes.
Right.
I kept like going back to their channel. I'm like, come on. I'm like, I need you to put your stuff out. 'Cause it's like, I need a little bit
some
more
tips.
meat here.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, I know he finds things that I never do. So
He actually also, to be fair, he does source a lot of that from Twitter and stuff. He always asks if there's anything he saw on Twitter. Ryan Airy, friend of the show, even if he doesn't know who we are.
Even if he doesn't know, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know any of that stuff. This is just, and I don't really know if there's a lot really here from a kind of Easter egg perspective that I don't, that we're gonna miss. But we'll figure it out. We'll find out next week if there's anything we missed. So I haven't seen that yet, but I am excited to dive in. Follow us on Twitter at Tower Babblecast, Facebook.com/Tower Babblecast, and head over to our website, towerofbabble.ca, to find links to everything we do, including our Patreon. You can help support the show over at Patreon by going to patreon.com/Tower Babblecast. And for as little as $5 a month, you can keep the lights on here. We are late again on that. We owe last month's film club, which is
Slackers.
City Slickers 2, The Legend of Curly's Gold. And we haven't had a chance to get into that. You people and your children and your make schedules very difficult. I'll just say that.
For the record, I haven't said if I'm coming back this month or not for film club. So
yeah, I'm not. Listen, that's fine.
Maybe the next
I'm just
one.
saying Jeremy also has children, so
yeah,
it's
they take up a lot of time. Okay.
I know, it's so annoying.
Do you know
for the rest
how much
of us.
my day I pick lint out of my baby's hands? It's a
Where
lot.
are they
more than you
finding
think.
lint?
I don't know. It just manifests in his little fists, and then I have to try and get it out of there, or like in between his little toes.
Because why? Otherwise, he'll eat it.
Because then he eats it, yeah. Because his
well.
hands are always in his mouth now. Or
Right.
he just looks grubby, and I don't want people to think I'm a dirty, unkept baby. He's just handfuls of lint.
Well, Kara gets upset because she finds lint in my belly button, which is funny.
Ew.
But it's not my fault. People who have hair around their belly button collect lint in their belly button.
No.
This is just a fact. It rubs the shirt, or I wear an undershirt, so that kind of part of it there. But like, it's just there's nothing I can do about it. And it's like, is lint really that gross? If you think about it, it's just little pieces of fabric.
I mean, you could just clean your belly button properly.
Well, it's not like I'm not. You know what I mean? It just collects throughout the day. I'm not checking it on a regular basis. I'm sure people are enjoying this live conversation about belly button lint. But listen, write in at towerofbabblepodcast@gmail.com if you are pro or anti belly button lint. I personally ambivalent to it. I think it's just
anybody's
fine.
Pro. I'm just.
They might be. Maybe they are. Lint turns out one of the softest materials in the world, right? You got to consider that, right? Have you ever just taken the lint out of your dryer and just like smushed it in your hand? You ever done that?
It's gross. It's full of dead skin cells and hair.
Oh, come on. You're overreacting. It's so soft.
It's disgusting.
You could, in theory, if you're really poor, fill a mattress with old lint and then use that. You know what I mean? As stuffing. I mean, if you had to. In like an emergency situation, obviously.
All I'm learning from this conversation is that you are as capable as a baby when it comes to lint.
I'm not eating it. I'm not eating the lint. Let's just be clear. I think that's an important distinction. All right, your baby likes to eat the lint. That is weird. I don't eat it. I remove it and throw it in the garbage.
It's just in his hands, and then his hands go in his mouth. And
but where? I just don't understand where the lint is coming from. I think
it just comes off his clothes. And
I don't see lint anywhere except for the dryer and my belly button.
Well, I don't know.
So I don't know. Whatever. I think that's everything. Let's just get into it. So
okay.
Enough belly button talk, okay, Rachel? I'm sick of it. All right, so this is Ahsoka Season 1, Episode 4, Part 4, Fallen Jedi. So Fallen Jedi. There's obviously one specific Fallen Jedi that this episode reveals that I think we'll wait to talk about for a little bit. We're not going to jump right into it at the very beginning, but just remember that we mentioned that here because it's part of the title. But also, Ahsoka falls off a cliff.
Well, yeah.
so that's a good part. And then obviously you have Balin. He's a fallen Jedi.
Yeah.
There's we've got Sabine taking a turn. So that's an interesting thing. There's an interesting bit there. I just think it's a great title. It's up
It
there
is a
with
really
like
great title.
Twilight of the Apprentice, which is like top tier titling by Dave Filoni. So
which is funny though, because great title, really shit. What do we call it?
The log line.
Log line, yeah.
Hera risks her career to help her friends while Ahsoka and Sabine confront enemies. It's really Hera focused, but she has like two scenes in this episode.
I know,
so
she's literally in the episode for like 2 minutes. And I'm like, okay, like, I don't.
Well, at least she's still in the episode. People were worried she wasn't coming back at all. So
yeah,
after
fair
last
enough.
week.
I just feel like you could have written a way. I don't know. Yeah, it's
also
just funny. But
the use, I don't know. I'll mention this right at the top. The use of the word enemy comes up a lot. Like Ahsoka says the enemy. You have what's his name? Hu Yang says references like, the bad guys as the enemy. It's just an interesting, like, it's just a very like military centric almost.
It's true.
Way of phrasing it, and I don't know if I love it. I feel like you'd like something a little bit more passive if you're someone like the Jedi. But
true.
Yeah.
So what else are you gonna say? The bad guys, like
the baddies, those baddies,
those bad guys. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess it's fun. It's just like there's just so many question marks. It's like the enemy. It's like, well, you guys really know that much about them to just start referring to them as your enemy, right? I mean, other than the fact that one stabbed you, that's a pretty dead giveaway.
I mean, yeah. That one, they did try and murder Sabine already.
Yeah, right. But they don't know anything about. They didn't know anything about Balin. They really only made the connection to Morgan Elsbeth through her operations.
Right. Yeah.
So like, it just feels like they're just very aggressive. It's a very aggressive word. That's all.
Some people just like to, have enemies. So.
Do you have any enemies, Rachel?
I hold grudges. So
that's a really honest thing to say.
So,
that's nice.
Oh, 100% I do. There's things that I will always admit, and it's that I am definitely a jealous person, and I hold grudges, and I don't care. And I will
those
hold
two
grudges,
things combined can be very powerful. I feel like
I'll hold grudges for things that didn't even involve me. Like if one of my friends is like, "Fuck this person," I'm like, "Yeah, fuck that person."
Yeah, that's funny.
I'm on team grudge. So.
Rachel.
Yeah.
The dark side of the Force is quick to give power, but will imbalance you. I'm just saying.
Whatever.
Just a quick note from Ahsoka. I don't see. Maybe that's why I'm hung up on the word enemy, because I think in modern society people don't really have enemies.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Yeah.
Unless you're in the military, which again.
Well, did you ever watch that? Probably not. But there's a Netflix documentary, The Tinder Swindler.
Absolutely not.
Oh, you have to. It's a wild story, but it's just this guy, whatever, he meets these women on Tinder, and he always has this kind of same MO, but he always ends up telling them that his enemies are after them, and then he needs a bunch of money so that they give him all this money. But yeah, he always talks about his enemies.
Why would anyone believe that? If someone said they're enemies, I would be like, I don't believe you're telling me anything.
It's because he would use the money that like one woman gave him, and this is like thousands of dollars, to like take this other woman on like a fancy plane vacation somewhere. So it's just wild.
Right.
It's pretty crazy story. But anyways,
the Tinder Swindler, by the way, top tier name for any documentary. That's good stuff.
I'm just saying some people have enemies.
I don't think I have it. I don't think I have any enemies. I truly listen. If you're my enemy, write in. Love to hear from you.
I bet you there's some people who think you're their enemy. Like they're like that Julian.
I would listen. If I'm your enemy, even more interesting. I'd love to know more. Please, again, that's towerbabblepodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, ask on Twitter. That's where you'll find out.
Yeah, that's the let's go. Yeah, at towerbabblecast on Twitter. Yeah. All right, so we read the log line already. This is directed by Peter Ramsey, written by Dave Filoni. Everything's written by Dave Filoni. And just while we're talking about directors, next week's episode, everyone's pumping up next week. Next week's episode, by the way, is going to be premiering in select theaters throughout the United States, as well as in Brazil, London, and a couple other places around the world.
Why not here?
Very select. I don't know. I asked that question.
I mean, I know
all the
why.
time. I also know why.
Yeah, we live in the butthole of Canada, so it makes sense.
I don't know. Have you been to Regina?
True.
Yeah. So Peter Ramsey has won one Oscar, by the way. I'm not going to get into what it was, but I'll just
Yeah,
say
I
that
don't care.
it's there. Let's see here. Was on the art department for lots of big movies. Has directed an episode of The Mandalorian. Has directed Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. That's a pretty big name. I think you might recognize. That's probably. I think, by the way, that's what he won an Oscar for. That did win Best Animated Movie that year in 2018. Also directed Rise of the Guardians, which is like that movie about how like the Easter Bunny, Santa Claus,
What?
and like all. Yeah, you never heard about this movie?
No.
It's a kids movie, and yeah, it says when the evil spirit Pitch launches an assault on Earth, the immortal Guardians team up to protect the innocence of children all around the world. So you've got the Tooth Fairy, the Easter Bunny, Santa Claus, and I'm sure there's others in there, but yeah, they like it's.
Is the Tooth Fairy played by The Rock?
The Tooth Fairy is played by Isla Fisher.
Oh, then I don't care as much.
Chris Pine plays Jack Frost. Alec Baldwin plays this North. Hugh Jackman plays
Oh, I do like Hugh
Bunny.
Jackman.
Okay.
I
Jude
do
Law
like him.
plays Pitch, the bad guy.
Is this a cartoon?
Yeah, it's an animated
okay.
movie. Yeah. Yeah. So there you go. That movie exists. So Peter Ramsey, I would say at this point, though only has like 7 director credits behind him, is pretty well established at this point, as well as the TV series We the People, Lost Ollie, and Monster vs. Aliens: Mutant Pumpkins from Outer Space.
Alrighty.
Yeah. But anyway, the most important one is Spider-Man. Obviously, also did The Mandalorian, and now having done this episode of Ahsoka. So I think, and does, by the way, I think does a very good job here. Any notes for Peter on this episode?
No notes for Peter. No, I think he did a real good job.
Okay, great. All right, so
I'm not a director. I can't give an actual director notes. I don't even know what
I'm
the
not
job
asking
entails.
for. I'm not asking for actual notes. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying
I
if anything stood out to you.
Don't quite understand why there's a different person directing than there is a different person who wrote it. I still don't get it. To me, I'm like, if you wrote it, you should direct it.
Well,
you know.
I mean, some people like Quentin Tarantino are both writers and directors.
Yeah,
James
that makes
Gunn.
sense to me because I'm like, you
Yeah,
wrote
but
it. And
it's a
you
different
should-
skill set.
I guess. Fair enough.
You are a multi-talented person if you can write and direct,
Mm.
right? Or and act if you're for some who can do
True.
all those things. But and for instance, Steven Spielberg, he's only written like 3 of the movies he's directed, right? So, I think it's 3. So like, and he's one of the greatest directors of all time, but he's not well known for his writing.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
All right. So again, I think we've given the overall kind of the credits here, but I think what's important is 2 things, or really one thing, which was pointed out in the Screen Crush recap last week, and something I did notice also, but didn't make note of it, which is during the Star Wars intro sequence, which has all the helmets, the Vader's helmet and 3PO's there, and etc. And it flashes the different colored lightsaber lights in front of them, blue and red. The one for which the first episode was all red, right? And then it returned to a more traditional format. But the thing that was interesting is that Merrick's mask, Merrick, who R.I.P. this episode, blue, and then Sabine's red.
Yeah.
So maybe
that was the same for this week too, but like I thought it didn't really matter. Like I thought they've done that in the past.
I don't know if it matters. It's just odd that they did it that. It's just weird that they did it that way.
Right.
It typically it's the good guys in blue and the bad guys in red.
Yeah.
So but maybe it's possible. Not saying for sure that they're foreshadowing things like Merrick is a Force ghost of a good guy, and Sabine is going to turn to the dark side. But they actually, Screen Crush released a whole video about their theory that Sabine's going to turn to the dark side, and like backed it up with all this, dubious evidence, I would say. But I think it's a well constructed argument. So well worth a watch. We obviously see something interesting in that vein here today in this week's episode. So something to keep an eye on if anything changes on that front. Any additional thoughts on that, or are you kind of still just kind of like it's probably nothing?
I think it's just nothing. I don't know. Yeah.
They just ran out of room and they're like, well, it has to be red and blue, so
I'm just like I'm trying to think back. Like I don't think in other shows that they've always gone good guy bad guy. Like I feel
there's
like
been
there's been other ones.
there's been ones where there's been a Mando helmet in red, and I always
Yeah.
thought that Mando looked like it was the Mandalorian, Din.
Mhm. Yeah,
But
exactly.
but
know.
it's also really hard to tell sometimes.
Yeah.
They flash over so fast,
It's so fast.
and like you only get so much detail
Mhm.
in them. I think the coolest one, by the way, is the armorer, because you get her shoulder like fluffs
Oh yeah.
in there. But
Mhm.
because the rest are just usually pretty bare bones. All right, let's get into the breakdown, the scene by scene. So we're gonna go by this scene by scene. Obviously, anything from this episode is fully spoiler. Spoilers are on the table for, which means we can mention that that Anakin makes an appearance today, which was shocking and surprising, and we'll get to that at the end of the episode. But also anything from the Clone Wars and Rebels and stuff that informs this show will be available for spoiler warnings as well. So we're going to do this scene by scene, and we'll get into this, and we'll or I guess before we get into that, do you want to give your overall impression of the episode?
I mean, there's so much cool stuff in this episode. I'm super excited to talk about it. So that's all I'll say until we get into the nitty gritty.
Sure. I'll say a few things then, which is that I think this episode is brilliantly paced, which is I think a nod to Peter Ramsey, because that is often a job of the director to achieve that. But I think it's brilliantly paced. I think the tension you could cut with a knife. So there's twists and turns and surprises. It never quite goes the way you expect it to go. And the action is top notch. It's varied, so you get a lot of different types of action. And there's a lot of, I think, subtle callbacks to other parts of Star Wars and that don't feel fan servicey. We'll get into some of those as we get into it. But I genuinely really enjoyed this episode. Obviously, episode 5 is supposed to be the banger of the season, so I'm really stoked about that. I'm guessing it means we're going to get Thrawn again, which is really cool. But there's also this whole question mark about what do we do with Anakin and what does he mean and what does all that have to do with it. We'll get to that at the end. But I think this is a really exciting piece of TV. I saw some people online saying that this is the best Star Wars has been on TV. Obviously, there's some recency bias there. People pointing to like, hey, well, what about the season finale of Mando season 2, right? Or even the season premiere of Mando season 2, which was really cool.
Yeah.
Notice how no one says anything about Mando season 3. A little rockier. But I largely agree, and I think the part of the reason I largely agree with that tack, or with the reasoning that this is like top tier Star Wars on television, which is one, it really achieves the kind of operatic, and it is a space opera, but operatic and really larger than life, mystical, mythological epicness that the movies can achieve from time to time. That, for instance, that The Last Jedi really achieved for me is the most recent movie example, right? And it was able to bring that into TV form. It felt important. It felt big. And I think the other part of it is, again, Kevin Kiner, or Kinner, again, I wish someone would just tell me officially what the right way to pronounce his name is, but who composes the music here, is really doing great work, like top notch stuff. And it really, and because he's been in Star Wars for so long and has been very subtle with his use of the classic themes and all these things, and now has been able to invent his own. He obviously has Ahsoka's theme and others, and Hera's theme and others. I think we even get a New Republic theme here, which I'm not sure if we've seen in the movies before, but every time we cut to the New Republic fleet, it's very bombastic, very almost similar in theme to what we got for the Rebel Alliance, but a little bit more subdued. So, I think that is a huge part of it. I really liked what they did with Mando, but that music is very different from what we get for this.
Yes, yeah.
So, and this feels, again, that it comes back to that very traditional orchestral type of of music that we got from
Yeah.
John Williams. So
Yeah, it just feels
I
very
really like
Star
it.
Wars.
Yeah, it does feel very Star Wars. But and then I saw someone today, and I was having a brief Twitter argument with them about. They're like, "Well, everyone says that Andor is the best Star Wars television show, but this feels like this is way better than that, and that's like not even important and all this stuff." And I'm like, I remind people that you don't have to, step on anything to raise something else up.
No,
Andor is
no.
still really, really great, and I still think achieves things that this show has yet been able to achieve, which is like really interesting character work, and with really strong performances based off of like epically strong writing. And this show does not have that, but most of Star Wars doesn't have that, so it's fine.
Yeah. And I mean,
Yeah.
I would just say like quickly too that we've said it before, like we don't I don't know, like things just don't need to be, not that they don't need to be compared. It's just like they doesn't need to be like, well, this is better than that, and like I don't think we need to rank every single thing like against one another. Like they can both be
I
like
agree.
equally good or good for different reasons, right? So, I don't know.
Yeah, 100%. And the Star Wars fandom has all sorts of internal health issues, I would say. But
That's a good way of putting it.
yeah, but I think we would all behoove ourselves a little bit to just kind of take these things one piece at a time, or at least one show at a time, or
Mhm.
and at the time we're doing this one episode at a time without saying, oh well, it's no Andor,
Well,
or
exactly. It's
it's
not even
not
over
like
yet.
something like the classic trilogy or whatever. It's like or the sequels are all terrible, which is not true. Only the last one is terrible. So there's still lots to like here. In fact, more than lots to like. This is really top tier stuff, but this doesn't have to be a competition with Andor, which is trying to achieve something very different. So let's get into it. We start on CTOS. We pick up basically right after the events of last week's episode. They are in their T6, which is Ahsoka's ship. It is downed in the forest, and they're working to fix it. Sabine is trying to contact Home One, get a hold of Hera, but their comms are still being jammed, and Hu Yang is trying to rewire the transmitter and is working away on that. I can't get over how much they're using Hu Yang in this episode, in this show. It's like it's so he has his own fight scene in this episode. It's really wild. I'm not upset about it. In fact, I'm pretty stoked about it. The way that they've like blended the practical and CG elements of the character are essentially seamless to me. So I think he looks really great. Like the way that he's lying down underneath this like seat to fix the thing. It's like it feels very real. Whereas you have something like even Chopper, which is a real droid. Obviously, it can't get out. It can't get underneath that seat.
No,
You know what
no,
I mean? It'd be very awkward.
Yeah, exactly. It just feels a lot more practical and
Human,
real and
yeah.
Human, exactly.
Okay, so with the ship out of operation, Ahsoka thinks it makes sense to look into the quote enemy ground base, but warns Sabine that they may need to make a tough decision. And this, I find that what I like about this episode is that it doesn't really waste any time. It really gets into the meat of it, which is to say, right away she's saying, "Hey, listen, if we can't stop them from leaving, and we can't get the map back and leave on our own, we need to destroy it so no one can go after Thrawn." And as soon as I heard her say that, we may need to make a tough decision, I kind of knew that that's where she was headed with that.
Oh, of course,
but it is a really fascinating idea that right away they're now put into this position where you have to choose between your personal attachments and the quote unquote right thing to do, right? And we all know how that typically plays out with Jedi. So usually not well, or at least not as clean cut as you'd hope. And so she says, Sabine talks about how, well, we can't just leave him there. If we destroy it, then he might be trapped there forever, and there's nothing and for good this time. And Ahsoka's retort is that it'd be better than allowing Thrawn's return as heir to the Empire. So you get the line, the heir to the Empire line, which I saw someone on Twitter complaining about, like, what the fuck is she even talking about? Why does she have to add this last bit of? It kind of is. It is a little clunky, but at the same time, it adds an air of gravitas, so I'm not that upset with it. It is a little funny because if you're like, it's the name of a book series from the extended universe, and if you had no idea what she was talking about, it might sound a little awkward. But I guess it's not really for those people. So
Yeah, exactly.
fair enough. Okay, so and then this is interesting. Ahsoka says, "Can I count on you?" And she says, "You know I can." What do you make of this exchange? How do you read what's happening? I feel it is quite layered.
Well, I mean, she's talking about "Can I count on you?" I think it's just she just means like, "Can I trust you to do
The
the
right thing.
right thing and not go with your emotions?" Right? Can I trust you? And I guess a little bit more of, can you be a Jedi this time? Can you?
Can you not be your usual self?
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's just kind of at its base value there of she's just asking like if she can trust her to do what needs to be done.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's hard to tell how much maybe Ahsoka is trying to read her, um, just naturally,
Mm-hmm.
or using the Force to try to understand her emotions in the moment, right? And I think it's clear that she understands that Sabine has a soft spot or a weak spot, probably a better way of phrasing, because it's exploited here this week for Ezra. I kind of wish that, because we know as Rebels watchers that there's a connection there, but
Right.
even then, the her kind of desperate nature to find Ezra feels a little out of place. And if you've never seen Rebels, it would feel even more awkward, because you'd be like, who is this person? Why do they care that much?
Yeah.
You really have to filling in a lot of blanks on your own, and there's just not a lot. Like, they really drill it home about how, in the Ezra's message, I love you like my sister, which is so
Yeah.
funny. I listen to this one podcast, and they always say like, oh yeah, love you like a sister that I want to.
Oh my god.
Yeah, right. So anyway, so and then like, oh, I know that's your only family you have left. It's like that. There's a line from Balin or later that's similar to that, and it's like, first of all, how do you even know that? Like,
Right.
her
Yeah.
mental state in that way, and like, it feels like they're really trying to drive home. She cares because it's the only family she feels like she has left, and that makes her vulnerable, right? But
Yeah.
if you didn't
Yeah.
know any of these pre-established things, you would have no way of it would be really hard, I think, to keep up with her characterization here.
I mean, fair, but again, it's if I'm Dave Filoni and I have written, Rebels, and this is my continuation of that story, then like sucks to be you if you haven't watched it. Like,
Right.
I'm sorry, I don't
So
think
it's
he's
like, also
writing
it's
it.
there. You can go back and watch it.
Yeah,
It's on the same
exactly.
service as
Like,
like,
I don't
it's not that
think
bad.
he's concerned about, oh, what if, some of the normies are confused? Then they can go watch Rebels if they're confused, because that's on them.
Right. I guess that's fair. I also just like, I like a tighter story, right? And
Yeah.
there is an element of it which is, I think, true, which is that regardless of the fact that we have seen Rebels,
Right.
um, and that this is considered to be, it's Rebel season 5,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, absolutely it is.
But it's not, though. The show is titled Ahsoka,
I know. I
and
know.
it's now in live action, so it inherently has this jarring separation between the two things that I think makes it, even as someone who has seen it myself, there's this kind of dissonance between the characters I'm seeing, and I think this is part of the reason that people are giving, Ahsoka a hard time. You know what I mean? Like, they've been
Mm-hmm.
giving Rosario Dawson this kind of like, oh, she's so wooden, and like, I just think she's playing a different version of the character, and that's totally fine. I think
Right.
we'll really get a good chance of kind of unpacking that next week if this interaction with Anakin is extended, right? Where we're really able to kind of compare and contrast her version of Ahsoka in relation to a version of Anakin that, by the way, we've only ever seen played by Matt Lanter. So,
Right.
there's some interesting pieces there. I saw someone talking about how Ahsoka feels like, people. The reason that Ahsoka is not taking off and being this big phenomenon, which I'm not convinced that that's even true, but was that this episode was like, all it's a copy of a copy of a copy. We're watching a different actress playing a version of a character that was originally played by somebody else, talking about things that past version of the character did, meeting a version of the character that we know from a previous movie, played by a copy of that person in a different by Matt Lanter in Anakin in a different position, right? Now coming back to play that same role to a different character, there's like because Hayden Christensen and Rosario Dawson,
Yeah.
as those characters, have never had any on-screen connection, which is like it's true when you say it like that. It's I guess but it just feels like you're really reaching because this is exciting in my opinion.
I think people just need to calm down a little bit. I guess
I think there's an element, there's a kernel of truth in there because there is something that feels off, right, about hearing Hayden Christensen say snips, right?
Yeah, fair enough.
And hearing Rosario Dawson say master or Anakin and turning around and like they don't talk to each other in this episode, really, right? But and we'll get more of that in next week. And I was really hoping we get flashbacks, to be honest, to kind of like a younger version of these characters, and because we knew that Hayden Christensen was going to be in this series, but this is certainly a different direction to take it. But there is something to be said about these characters who we know have like this long-standing relationship that we know so well, now having to almost replicate that. It's a very difficult proposition, I think, as both as performers and as viewers to try to kind of bridge that gap. I don't envy that. It's hard.
No, of course.
Anywho, what was I talking about?
We're in like the very first.
Yeah, right.
Made it
right.
a minute.
Yeah.
In.
Okay. So yeah, again, I they're on. Ahsoka is probing Sabine to try to understand her vulnerabilities here.
Right. Yes.
Hu Yang comes outside of the ship to start working on the exterior of the ship. Ahsoka, sensing something may be off, tells him to be careful. But unfortunately, there's already an HK droid who has spotted them and is reporting back from the forest. So already the stakes are rising in this episode. By the way, the HK droid, really cool Black Series figure that I've now added to my list of things I want to own. Next to my Dark Trooper and my Ahsoka, which I talked about in the first episode.
Yes.
So, any final thoughts on that first scene?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, I will say this one more thing. I really love the look of the ship in the forest. The look of the forest is really cool.
The forest is very, very cool.
The red leaves and stuff. It really feels familiar yet alien. It's really cool. And it's very moody, which is also a nice thing. Okay, so we have a name for the area, which we called Stonehenge before, and they just call it the Henge, so we're just going to call it that. And so Shin reports to Baylan that they found the Jedi starship about 12 kilometers away, which is actually quite far if you're moving on foot, to be honest.
12 clicks.
Yeah, so or maybe their version of clicks is not a kilometer.
I thought they say kilometers in something before. Isn't it in Bad Batch where they text says kilometer?
Yeah,
we clocked that before because usually they say clicks, and this time they said kilometer,
which is crazy because now that again one of those things where it's like that is a very human measurement of distance.
Yeah.
But whatever.
I mean, yes really and no. Matter. Just it's the most. It'd be worse if they were like it's a mile, because like
right, because
that's just a weird arbitrary length of whatever that the United States made up. No offense to our U.S. listeners. At least a kilometer is 1,000 meters.
To be fair, I think the British came up with miles first.
Did they? So, okay, we'll blame them.
They also They also weigh things in stones. So, no offense.
Yeah, that's
odd. Yeah. So 12 clicks away. They certainly hand wave away that distance. It doesn't really matter. It's odd that they even mentioned the distance, to be honest. Because then you start thinking about it, and now here we are thinking about it, and it doesn't matter. Baylan has the guards move in and instructs Shin and Merrick to assist. Morgan asks Baylan if he's afraid after he mentions that they should probably hurry things up. But he simply says that it's just, quote-unquote, experience. Baylan is such a cool character. I mean, obviously it's a massive shame that the actor passed away.
Yeah.
we don't know the fate of the character, as we said, but just Ray Stevenson's death in and of itself is sad. But now with this additional kind of like look at this performance, it's so cool. It's so imposing. But
He's
yet,
such a great character, yeah.
but also like so layered, because again, he talks about how he would be ashamed to kill Ahsoka, but it's not sentimental, it's just truth. And now he has this whole angle about he's been around the block, so he's not that he's scared, but he just knows that there's complications coming and that kind of thing. So
to me, he very much has not necessarily a dark side vibe. It's that kind of in the middle, more what's the word? What am I looking for? Not self-sufficient, but when you just work for yourself.
Self-absorbed?
Your own self-ambitions, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
He's very like whatever, center-focused, I guess, on what he thinks is the greater good and what they should be doing, right? So he's not necessarily one side or the other.
I don't know what he thinks the greater good is. He mentions the term greater good later, and I don't know what he's getting at by that.
Well, exactly. So that's part of it, right? So
yeah, it's just, again, it's like, so his motivations are, somewhat questionable. He's working for the bad guys, but it's clear that he's not, that he's, a hired gun, or a sellsword, as it were. So, there's just so many questions about what, who he is, what his motivations are, and why he feels the way he does, and who, is Shin his daughter? We have no idea. I just so many things we just don't know. And that, I think, makes him interesting. But again, his just presence alone, his size, the way he moves, especially in this episode, I think you create even more mystery and intrigue. So, really cool character.
Yeah. He's funny to me too, because even in the scene, right, he has sent those other guards and I guess 1 or 2 HK droids to go find Ahsoka's ship, fully knowing that they were all going to die. Like, he just and doesn't care. Like, he's just like, well, it's not going to stop them for long, so he just sends Shin and Merrick there, knowing that they're going to have more of a fight. But it's just, it's
how do you find good henchmen in the Star Wars universe? Like,
I guess just money, but
yeah, I guess it's just funny because it's like, I guess you don't know you're going to be going up against Jedi, but if someone was like, "Oh yeah, you go hunt down these Jedi," I'm like, "No, thank you." Like, that
that's
sounds
what I would
like,
say.
Yeah,
absolutely not.
Or at least make sure my family's well paid.
Yeah.
So then we cut to the title card. Cut back to the T6. The guards are approaching quietly as Huyang works on the ship unaware. Inside the ship, Sabine, she's preparing her Mandalorian weapons. By the way, her blaster's super cool. Like the way that she like I don't know how guns work, but like the way she cocks it and like looks
like
for
there's
like it looks like looks like there's supposed to be some sort of like cartridge or something, and she can't find it, and she's flustered because she's all she's in her feelings, and she's worked up and she's worried. Ahsoka, sensing this, is concerned, or at least that's if she asks if she should be concerned. And cautions that Sabine needs to try to do what's right regardless of your personal feelings. And this is something that, I think is easy to say, hard to do, right? And Sabine is, quick to say, how can you say that? Like that, it's such. How can you know when when the right thing is to do? When my gut tells me that I should be going after Ezra, something like that, along that line.
Yeah.
And she's saying, when the stakes are this high, you have to trust that you're doing the right thing when you're making those types of decisions. But again, it's really hard to know in the moment. And, I finally, by the way, in this episode, I really feel like we're getting some interesting character dynamics, and they were butting heads, and that only takes you so far. But now you have this more of an exploration of like, hey, I'm trying to guide you as your teacher. You need to set your emotions aside and try to make, logical choices and decisions. And she's having a really hard time doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And Ahsoka, meanwhile, is trying to be like, give her the space to let her learn those lessons on her own without, having it compromise everything. It's just an interesting tightrope to walk.
Yes.
Meanwhile, Huyang has fixed something. He says, finally, some progress, which is funny. While an HK droid kind of sneaks up on him from behind. He hears something. I love his little squinty eyes. You notice that, like, when he he like is looking into the distance. His
Oh yeah.
eyes like squint. It's so funny.
It's a very yes. I like. I really much like how much character his face has for sure.
Yeah. So then an HK droid attacks him, surprisingly not using a blaster, maybe trying to be quiet. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And and they have like a Rock'em Sock'em robots.
I was gonna say the same thing about Rock'em Sock'em robots. That's super
Yeah.
funny.
They have a
They just
have you ever seen that Hugh Jackman movie? What's it called? Real Steel.
No.
Surprisingly great.
Interesting.
It's about boxing with robots.
Huh.
But this is, the fight's fine. It's
Yeah.
interesting that he can hold his own. Not that surprising considering he's a
Oh, I
ancient
mean, to
droid
me,
who
I
trains Jedi.
assumed. Yeah.
Right?
I'm surprised he doesn't have his own lightsabers. I think it'd be cool.
Droids can't have lightsabers.
Grievous did.
Grievous is an android.
Whatever. I still think that this guy who teaches Jedi how to create their lightsabers could have his own lightsabers.
Or at least like a vibro thing. Whatever
Blade
those
or
vibro
something.
guards use.
Yeah.
That'd
He
be
can have
cool.
weapons, but yeah, I also really liked that the HK droid like covers his mouth and
Oh,
that
I
still
know.
muffles it.
It's
which
that. How does that work?
Yeah, it cracks me up because I guess that's where the speaker is, which it
Yeah.
makes sense. Okay, you
Sure.
build a droid, it makes sense that you would put the speaker where its mouth is.
But how much is
whatever.
how much is the metal hand really covering that?
Right? I thought it was so funny that it muffled it. I was like, I don't know.
But it's also like pretty intense where he's like help
Yeah.
and then he's like yelling for help.
Yeah.
It's like when you hear someone yelling for help and someone covers their mouth, that's like a really kind of like intense is I've used that word already, but it is really intense. Like you're like right away you're up, at the edge of your seat.
I mean, I was worried about him for a minute. I'm like, they better not like kill Hu Yang.
I just said, but like also they could kill Hu Yang. Like that's a
They
character
could,
that I could see.
I'm attached
killed.
to him though, so
Yeah, but it's
I'm
like
gonna be
also-
upset about it.
I'm attached to Hu Yang on multiple levels. One, really like the performance.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that goes without saying. David Tennant is great. I've also been rewatching Good Omens, who he has a big role on that. There's season 2 of that is now available. We haven't started that yet, but shout out to Amazon Prime's Good Omens, Terry Pratchett book, based on Terry Pratchett book. Very entertaining, very fun. Anyway, so I'm attached to him for that. Obviously, there's like, I guess maybe the most that I'm attached to him by is his direct line to the Jedi Order, his ability to connect dots from the past that we know from the pre-Clone Wars era, right? Or even from the Clone Wars era with things happening now, right? Which there's so few characters left who can do that. And, we obviously as an audience have an attachment to those things, and Hu Yang kind of is like a physical representation of that line. So it would be a shame if he was decommissioned.
Oh, a super big shame. Yeah.
Yeah. Remember that. That's the term we're going to use if he ever dies. It's what a super big shame.
What a super big shame. I'll have more choice words. I'll be upset about it.
Yeah, fair enough. So in a smart move, he cuts the power, basically undoing the work he just did, and this alerts Sabine and Ahsoka. I like the little that dumb droid, and Ahsoka's like, that would never happen, and she just jumps right into action.
Yeah.
It's a fun dynamic. A full fight begins, and we get Ahsoka and Sabine working together, and you have Sabine in her full Mandalorian armor with her helmet on, which looks really cool. She's got little lights on there, which I think is a nice touch on her armor.
Yes.
And they make short work of the droids and the guards. It's really badass.
Ahsoka stabs a guy in the face. It's wild. And I think she may or may not cut another dude's head off, or at least
Are we sure those aren't droids that she's stabbing in the face?
I think it's just dudes, and it could be droids. There's one that the guy that she pulls in front of the other one when he's shooting, and then Sabine,
that is crazy.
Like,
that's such a cool
lassos
mode.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and pulls him forward, and then Ahsoka just slices his face. And there's another one that she stabs through the face.
Well, okay, so like I said, they are deadly together, and Hu Yang even says so. Like, hey, stick together.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are better off that way. Which, by the way, I will admit that line feels a bit clunky.
Yeah.
I don't know why we needed Hu Yang to say, hey, guys, it's really great working with you, and I just really want you guys to do so well together. And I
Yeah.
think if you stay together, you'll be stronger for it.
Right.
And they're like, oh my god, could you be sappier?
Well,
You
it's
know?
kind of like the opposite of like the old horror movie trope where everyone splits up all the time and then they all get
Yes.
picked off one by one, right? Where it's, you're yelling at the TV like you should
But
stick
it's weird to
together.
call it out. I think that's what's weird
Yeah.
about it. It's like,
Yeah, it's fair.
hey, make sure you stick together, because then immediately they split up and you're like, oh no, right? And like
well, they don't immediately split up,
almost
but eventually.
immediately is
Yeah.
like they get confronted by
Mm-hmm.
Shin and Merrick, and
Yeah.
she runs off to take on Shin, like,
Right.
at the drop of a hat.
Yeah.
Right. So they're technically together, but like
Yeah,
not
that far
fighting
apart.
together.
Yeah, that's true.
They're not working together in that case. Although I don't know how much Sabine would be able to hold her own against Merrick.
I
It's
don't
also
think
unclear
she
how
could.
skilled. Like, there's a lot of question marks about Merrick that are still unanswered. We'll have to get to that.
Yes.
So anyway, they take out these guards, as they said it wouldn't take long, and Hu Yang is okay. Ahsoka asks him to prioritize getting the transmitter fixed because they need to get a hold of Hera ASAP. And before they leave, as I said, he asked them to stick together. We get a then quick scene where we cut to the New Republic fleet. I guess any quick thoughts on that fight sequence or anything else?
No, it was just badass. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching them just kill a bunch of guys together.
I will say this episode is cool. There's lots of action.
Yes, there is.
My girlfriend says that's when she falls asleep most.
Oh, really?
I don't know. Yeah, I get it, because I guess like it's like it all just kind of looks like a little ballet, and then you're like, oh, okay, that's nice, and then you're like, I'll tune back. I'll just rest my eyes and I'll tune back in when things are happening again.
It's true. It could just because there's no dialogue really, so it's just lots of shooting noises that you just I see it.
I don't personally, but teach their own. So to the New Republic fleet, Hera decides she's going to go rogue and asks her lieutenant. By the way, this lieutenant has a cool name. First Officer Vic Hawkins.
Ooh,
that's his name. Vic Hawkins. Really, really cool.
I feel
name.
like that's I don't know. To me, that's like a cop name. Like that just sounds.
Yeah, it sounds kind of like a Star Trek name, to be honest.
Yeah, that too. It just feels like a name I would hear on like NYPD Blue or something.
Yeah. Hey, Vic.
Yeah. But he would be like FBI.
Give me your badge and gun, Vic.
Yeah, coming in and stealing your cases or something.
I'm so sick of your shit, Vic Hawkins.
Yeah.
Officer Hawkins. Yeah, exactly. So she tells Vic Hawkins to cover for her at the meeting of the Joint Chiefs, which is cool. Cool that they have that.
Here's the thing that I find funny about this. So, because he's like, oh, you can't leave without permission or something, right?
I guess like from the Senate, right? That's the idea.
Yes, I get that. But Hera fully always operated as her own rogue rebel squadron.
Hey, but we're at different times now. They have a government. They have to answer to a higher power.
I mean, fair, but like in terms of shady shit happening and they're not listening to her, like I don't know. Does she really need permission to like take her ship and go somewhere?
I thought she'd leave sooner.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Like to me, I just think it's funny. Like, why would Hera need anybody's permission to do anything fucking ever? Like, she's the rebel cell leader. Like, I don't know.
Isn't it weird that Carson Teva came and not Zeb? Like, where's Zeb in all this?
Oh,
don't they work out of the same base?
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know. Anyway,
true.
I just saw someone bring that up, and I was just like, that's a fair. Like, if anyone's gonna go and try to help Sabine and Ahsoka, you'd think Zeb would be right at the top of that list.
Well, maybe Zeb doesn't fly planes, does he? I don't know.
I don't know. He's not much of an X-wing pilot, but also the Ghost is there. So
yeah,
and she brought her son.
Yeah, why? That's my main question about this. Why did you bring your kid?
I kept wondering that, and I'm like, maybe because she doesn't want to leave him behind because there's gonna be blowback. And
I know he lives on this ship, but like that's probably his home too. But
yeah, I don't. It's so.
Same time though, I have
bizarre.
A kid. I would not take him
right into the line of danger.
I would not be like, oh, there's bad guys. Let me take my kid with me.
Yeah, let's go. Right. I guess it's a different Star Wars universe, different universe, but.
True.
I kind of just thought we'd get that one reference to him last week, and then that would be it. Like, I don't know if we need a lot of Jason Syndulla, to be honest, but because like I don't really know what he's bringing to the table at this point. As,
unless he's useful for some reason in the next episode. But
I mean, he's force sensitive,
and
wants to be a Jedi, but like he's not yet. So
Yeah,
like
exactly.
I don't know. He's just like kind of an annoying kid at this point. Although he does get to give the "I have a bad feeling" line
Yes.
in this
Yes.
episode. Let's go. So, she takes the ghost out of the hangar and is joined by a squadron of X-wings, one of which is Carson Teva, as I mentioned before.
Which is great.
I like the line here.
Oh, sorry. Go
say
ahead. No, I was just gonna say I love seeing the ghost in live action. It's just it's one of my favorite Star Wars ships.
It's a good looking ship.
It's just cool, and I like that it has the little compartment for the Phantom too.
Yeah.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
it's just it's such a cool ship. So I just like seeing it. We have seen it in live action before.
Technically, yeah, in Rogue One and in Rise of Skywalker. But
yes.
I mean, you blink and you miss it type of.
Well, exactly. So it's cool getting to actually
also,
see it.
Yeah, I guess it's parked somewhere. Is it parked at the Rebel base in Rogue One in the distance somewhere? Maybe, perhaps. Am I missing that?
I can't.
I know it's for sure at the Battle of Scarif, but I don't remember if it's
Yes.
somewhere else. But anyway,
Yeah.
they surprisingly, Herrick and the Rebels get a lot in Rogue One. Surprisingly, all things considered, a verbal shout out and Chopper gets to appear. Come on.
Yeah.
So anyway, Carson Teva's there, further connecting us to the Mando verse of it all. Good to see him. Always a fan. Canadian actor. Always have to mention that. We got a couple cool lines. Once a rebel, always a rebel. And then the on your signal Phoenix leader, because again, of course, they were Phoenix Squadron in Rebels. So that's really cool. Almost makes you wonder if did Carson was he part of Phoenix Squadron after after
maybe.
Rebels? Maybe.
He's cool. I like him.
Yeah, he's got a good head on his shoulders. What any other? There's not much to mention here.
Not really.
She bails on the New Republic and is off to save the day. And I was thought, at this moment, because we get this kind of New Republic anthem. It's really soaring music here, and meanwhile, we know shit's hitting the fan back on CTOS. So I'm like, oh shit, are they gonna get X-wing backup? Kind of again similar to the Battle of Scarif, where those X-wings fly in and we get that Rebel theme and it's really exciting.
Yeah.
I was hoping for that. We don't get that obviously, but that's what it was. I was like, ooh, okay. Now we're getting somewhere. I was okay, I'm into it. So we go back to the henge, and Morgan and Baylan prepare to calculate the hyperspace jump by using. Okay, so there's some complicated stuff here. So they're using the map that they got from episode 1,
yes.
that Ahsoka got from episode 1, to transmit the hyperspace coordinates to the Eye of Sion. And so the Eye of Sion now has descended into atmosphere.
Yes.
Okay. And it's really cool how it's looming. Again, similar to Rogue One, where you could see the Death Star looming in the sky.
Cool. It's always cool when you can see the big bad whatever just
looming in the sky.
Looming in the sky. Yeah. Whether it's
love a good loom. I'm a big fan of a loom. And so this map, in conjunction with the henge, is able to beam coordinates to the Eye of Sion, and it needs to calculate these. And the reason that this is important and taking longer than a normal hyperspace jump is because, as Baylan mentions, if the calculations are off by even a little, we'll be lost in the void. And so any journey from one galaxy to another means you have to enter into, basically nothing space. There's no stars, there's no planets, there's nothing there. It's completely empty.
Exactly.
Right? Which means that if something goes wrong, you are on your own and likely die a cold and painful death. Or at least not painful, or at least probably cold. You basically, you need to be absolutely sure that everything's going to work and everything's going to go right. Otherwise, you are dead.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
And I think that's a pretty a tall order, right? So
yeah,
Baylan wants to make sure they're right, so they have to calculate this jump. And I love the line here where Morgan's like, "Have faith," and Baylan responds, "I lost that a long time ago." Mm-hmm. Interesting. So you got to learn all these little tidbits of info. What caused him? Was it Order 66 that caused him to lose faith, or was it something else? It's there's when did he decide he was going to become this kind of
Yeah.
lack of a better term, gray Jedi. Those don't exist.
You gotta
Of course,
love a
but-
good little cryptic line by
Yeah,
characters like
which is
that.
like all of his
Where
lines.
it's just like, oop, here's another little tidbit into his backstory. Like we just keep getting little drops every once in a while, and I'm like, fuck, it just makes me so much more.
Like not even so much his backstory, but his like mental state.
Well, yeah, who he is as a character too. It's it just makes me more and more, I don't know, intrigued by his character.
Yeah, right. And the thing is, it's like you have Balin, who has all these characteristics that are very fascinating, and then Shin, who doesn't really have any of those things.
Yeah.
And it's like it's not so much an indictment on Shin. It's just like in comparison to Balin, her character is just not as interesting, right? She's a sidekick essentially. So
you say she's a psycho?
Sidekick, also a psycho.
Yeah, to me, she just seems like a complete like sociopath. Like it's just like she's dead-eyed, no emotion other than just hate. Like she's
Well, she actually has that cool line where you have no power, which is a really cool line in this episode. But mostly she's just kind of like too unseasoned to be able to be like imposing.
Yeah.
Okay, so they power up the map transmitter, and we get this like pretty cool like gold tablet thing that has 9 segments on it, which some people were saying might be another callback to like Norse mythology with like the 9 realms. I think that might be a stretch, but it's a visual representation of how long it's going to take. It's a clock essentially to calculate the final coordinates, and by activating it, it literally starts the clock. Right, the clock is now ticking, which means that the stakes are now higher, and the tension now basically incrementally increases as each of those segments fills up. And it's a pretty simple cinematic tool, but it's also a very effective one because now we know exactly how long. Well, not exactly, because when Morgan asks later how long, they say moments, which which sure, okay. I would be so annoyed if I was like Morgan. I was like, "What do you mean moments?
Yeah, what does that
You're
mean?
a droid. What? How do you even what is that? Come on." I don't know.
To me though, that's just droid speak for like, shut up and let me do my job.
Sure. Yeah, right. Meat sack.
Yeah.
Is she human? She's not, right? She's a Night Sister.
No, she's a Night Sister, which is
Dathomirian.
They have a name. It's like Zabrak. No, it's not Zabrak. That's
Zabrak is the male version. I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't. We can look that up. Is she? Let's see here. Wikipedia. Morgan Elsbeth. And by the way, there's. Well, I'll just. It says she's a human.
She's
a human female Night Sister. That's what it says.
No.
So there you go. That's what it says. That's what it says. I'm just telling you what it says. Wikipedia.
Well, that's someone who doesn't know what they're doing.
Well, I don't know. A lot of people are looking at it. Anyway. It's pretty. Her thing is now pretty long. I feel like sometimes they just kind of like fill in these pages with like, this is what happened on this episode, basically.
Well, yeah,
where
exactly.
she appeared.
Yeah, because to me, I mean, I guess maybe she's not like I don't know. Is she not full Night Sister? But she seems to have witchy powers, so I don't know.
It says Elsbeth was capable of accessing Night Sister magics, an aspect of the Force. By the way, magic with a K, signified by its green color. She used it to activate the map to Thrawn. Again, like, yeah, we saw that. Fierce and deadly combatant with melee weapons, such as the Beskar spear, though she was ultimately no match for Ahsoka Tano. Okay, so we solved that mystery, at least for now.
Yeah, I guess when I looked up Massage Ventress, because she's actually,
she also human?
No, she's full blown Night Sister.
Right.
It just says Dathomirian female.
Okay.
So, I don't know.
So maybe there's just maybe that will be updated later, and she's technically a Dathomirian female, but she doesn't really look like the Night Sisters that we know.
No, she's not as creepy looking as the other ones. It's true.
Mother Talzin.
Yeah.
Okay. So we cut back to the Henge now that the clock is ticking, and remind everyone about that. Ahsoka and Sabine are running through the forest, 12 kilometers, and encounter Shin and Merrick. They split up almost immediately, with Sabine taking on Shin, probably for revenge, and Ahsoka taking on Merrick. Again, not so much revenge, but they have fought each other before. And then there's a question here, which is like, after the this moment, or at this moment, she uses one lightsaber, and she only uses one lightsaber for the rest of the episode.
Right? I was curious about that
Why
too.
is that? Why
I
do you
don't
think
know.
that is?
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I was wondering the same thing.
I can think of a
I
reason.
just
I can understand it when fighting against Balin, because he's using this like really these heavy attacks, and you
Mhm.
need to kind of like reinforce your
Yeah.
yourself with maybe two hands on your saber.
Yeah, like I'm
I
curious if
get
it's
that.
just like fighting styles, like depending on who she's
It
fighting
could be,
and
yeah, she's probably a master in all the forms,
right,
right?
yeah. And I mean, I
And
know she has fought Inquisitors before too. So I don't know, maybe it's just when you're fighting against someone with a double blade too, it's easier to just have one, but I
I
don't
heard
know.
someone say that it was like, if she's fighting only one person, she typically only uses one saber, but if she's fighting multiple people, she uses both,
Oh,
and
okay.
she's maybe
Yeah.
like evolved in that way.
Because I
By
mean,
the
yeah,
way,
she was using both against like those mercenaries and stuff, but
yeah,
yeah, I don't know.
well, it's just easier to cut through multiple droids at once if you have both lightsabers out.
Hmm.
Um, how do you? By the way, how do you like the look of the sabers in this episode? Do they look right to you?
Yeah, I don't think they didn't nothing bugged me about them.
Yeah.
Why?
Okay. I know people have been. There's been stuff online about like the look of the lightsabers of late on Disney Plus has been,
Hmm.
feels like something's off. There's in
Oh.
an element of it. They look. I think my everyone typically, not everyone, I shouldn't say, but there seems to be a consensus that lightsabers look best in Revenge of the Sith. They're
Oh, okay.
they're bright. They have that pointy end, right?
Right,
Which I
right.
think they introduce in Revenge of the Sith for the first time. And I think you get a little bit of that again here. I would like them to go back to more of that look. I don't know. I think of Twilight of the Apprentice, by the way, and like when Ahsoka's fighting Maul, the way that the blades move, and this is something that they can do in an animation a lot more easy. It like
Right.
the blades have this very like long blur, so they kind of look
Yes.
like they're stretching as they're being waved. And I feel like I would like something closer to that
Mm-hmm.
in live action. I don't, just more stylized. I think. Balin specifically, something looks a little off to me. It's not just the color. There's something about it. Look, it's feeling like it's missing some kind of like some weightiness to it.
Interesting.
In its
See,
look
because
specifically.
I find the way that like Balin fights is quite like and
It's
not
really
in a bad
cool.
way. It's very stiff. Like he's kind of
Yes.
like Vader. Like you know how Vader fights very like hard and stiff and
Yes.
um
Yes.
like his blows look like they have a lot of force behind them,
Yes.
but they seem a little bit almost slower.
Well, I don't know if you know, he's more machine than man
Well, yes.
now.
But I just mean like Balin kind of has those really heavy-handed kind of strong blows there too. So I just
Yeah, I
find his
agree.
fighting is a little stiffer, but that's also
Yeah,
just
we'll
kind of
get to
like
that.
Dooku. Like Dooku's always been a stiffer.
Really, I thought Dooku had more of like a.
He's
He was
got some
supposed to be this
flair.
great duelsman, right?
Yeah.
And
He's
so
got more of like fencing kind of style,
yes,
I guess.
exactly.
But
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, like a lot of the lightsaber combat's based on kind of different types of sword fighting.
Well, yes. Yeah,
Ahsoka
cuz
is very much Japanese style right
Japanese.
now,
See, to me,
like
Balin would be a
katana
lot more like a big,
knight.
heavy knight sword. Yeah,
Yes, he's like a
exactly.
broadsword
Yes, yes,
kind of idea, which I feel
exactly.
like they had the opportunity to really like lean into that with Kylo Ren's kind of like his saber with the cross guards,
Right?
but they
Yeah.
don't really do. And I think
Yeah.
it's a missed opportunity. I think they maybe thought about it later. They're like, missed opportunity. Anyway, so they run into each other in the forest. Um, Sabine gets her helmet knocked off by a force push. Do you think that the reason she doesn't keep her helmet on is because the actress is like, I want to like my face to be on the screen more often,
um.
or do
Well,
you think,
no, I don't know. Adam and I were talking about it.
or is it symbolic?
I think he had a really good point of that I didn't even think about was he thought maybe because they make a big point of showing the helmet
Yes,
again on the
later.
ground,
Mm-hmm.
and he was wondering that if maybe they'll be able to use because he said there is he can't remember when it's from, but it's basically that with Mandalorian armor, it's almost linked. So
Right.
if you lose your helmet or if you lose kind of like a piece of it, you can find it again because it's it's all kind of connected, almost like
Sure.
comms, right?
So there
So
could be some way to trace them.
yeah, like almost a way to track her because the rest of her is on that ship. So since her
Right.
helmet is still there, maybe they can use her helmet to find where she is.
Well, that's interesting. So that shot of that helmet on the ground later, I found to be, first of all, really cool looking, because you have
Right.
like the fighting in the helmet in the foreground, and then they're, you know, out of focus in the background, and it just looks really cool.
Yeah.
But knowing what we know about what happens later with Sabine and her kind of her turn, or at least her temptation, is there is a, I don't know if it's similar, but the way it reminded me of Vader's helmet in the cave on Dagobah when Luke slashes it off and it's lying on the ground and his own face is in it.
Right,
you know?
right, yeah.
And that's very symbolic of what you might become, right?
Mhm.
And she loses her Mandalorian helmet and it's lying there, and then we see what happens later. I feel like that. I don't know. I don't think that's an accident, but I and I might be reaching on that, but I like that connection on that.
Yeah, I like that too.
Okay, so meanwhile, the first two of 9 coordinates have been calculated. So again, the clock continues to tick. Ahsoka is fairly easily handling Merrick, and then they do that. It's a lot of like posing, which is actually fine, because like some of the coolest stuff with lightsabers is like not so much less the combat, but some of the, like the twirling and spinning and like posing that people do, which is cool looking. Right?
I find
Like, how stupid is that the move in Revenge of the Sith with like spinning their sabers at each other? It doesn't make sense, but it's cool looking.
Yeah, it looks cool. I don't mind the kind of posing and stopping when they kind of fight like that, because to me, they're almost going back to those like Jedi form, or not the Jedi forms. Well, yeah, the forms, like the fighting forms.
Exactly.
And if they're both classically, technically, trained, it's almost like your resets, or like you're
it's
waiting
a reset
for your,
and it's a reevaluation.
You're waiting for your opponent to make a move, like you're sitting back waiting for them to make a move, as opposed to you going on the offensive and then
it
blocking
feels more
you.
strategic and less like
it's more
aggressive.
Like chess to me. It's like they're each making their moves. I kind of like it. I'm like,
yeah, me too. And it reminds me of specifically this moment where they like line up and Merrick turns on the spinning blade.
Yeah.
And it's very Grievous style when he kind of starts spinning his blades and approaching, and you're like, "Ooh, what do? You just stick your blade in there, just right through the middle, right where his handle is."
Yeah. Which I think is what she's done before.
Yeah, she does, and she like splits it open.
Yeah.
But she does this like very, again, almost traditional Japanese katana stance with 2 hands on the saber, and like holding it low, which also somewhat feels like some of the traditional like episode 4, like the way that they held their sabers in that, which I think they've tried to like basically retcon into being like a specific form, or like because they're old or whatever, but it's less exciting. But it reminds me of that. But then most importantly, it reminds me of Obi-Wan and Maul's last fight on Tatooine.
It's very similar.
Which has this very quick, like, okay, it's a attack defense move from either Obi-Wan or Ahsoka in this case, that kind of quickly strikes and leaves the other one kind of like shocked and both cases dead.
Maybe she learned the move from Obi-Wan. Maybe
I don't know. Maybe because they've had some force comms.
Well, even when she was like Anakin's Padawan or whatever, it's like,
oh, that's true. That's 100% true
from Obi-Wan.
But it's just a very similar move. It's very cool.
It is very similar. Yeah.
Highly recommend that, by the way, for those who've never seen that scene from Rebels.
It's great.
Where
I forget that that's in Rebels. I always think it's in Clone Wars, and obviously it's not.
It's not, because they look silly. But other than that small caveat, and they're damn super skinny lightsabers of that show. I just feel like I would love to see that moment visualized again in literally any other way. Again, that's me. That's my own hang up. So I understand. But she takes out Merrick, cuts him across the chest, and then he explodes into dust? ? What happens here?
To me, I think this is spooky Night Sister magic.
Okay.
Because I don't know, there's obviously stuff in the Clone Wars. Is it Clone Wars? Yeah, Clone Wars, and with them.
And there's some stuff in Rebels too.
Yeah, like often things explode into green.
Sure.
But
It's like a gray-green
yeah, because I
situation
mean,
here.
even when so in Clone Wars, when Sidious kills Savage,
Yes.
um, he kind of explodes in some of that green stuff because the Night Sisters with their magic make Savage a lot bigger and
Right.
obviously, buffer. Um, so yeah, I think this is spooky Night Sister magic. Either she reanimated an old Inquisitor or just did
Created one whole
something.
cloth.
Yeah, like did
Yeah.
something out of just the armor.
Yeah,
So,
it's really cool. But
mm,
also, it's like this smoke monster can use the Force and all this.
smoke
It's like
monster.
it's. It makes me think of the smoke monster from Game of Thrones. By
Did
the way.
he ever use the force though?
Oh yeah, he throws his last episode. Or two
Oh,
episodes
he
ago, he throws his saber
boomerangs
and
it.
then like pulls it back.
Right.
And Ahsoka does
That's
that cool
why.
move where she just like steps aside.
That's why I thought maybe she like has reanimated an Inquisitor or something. I do like though that Merrick is just Merrick. He's not some other dude or some other
Right. This is
person.
people have
It's
said
like
that.
like
Yeah.
fuck. I kind of like it's like finally we can just have like a character that has a mask on and they're not somebody else.
Well, yeah, and I think
Like,
maybe that's like on purpose, like it's a red
yeah,
herring to
yeah.
specifically to throw people off the scent.
Well, yeah.
I think there still might be more to it. I don't know. Maybe I
Well,
don't know.
maybe
Maybe she'll
she.
make a new one.
Well, maybe she'll just come back with Thrawn and be like, "Oh, you killed him. That's fine. I'll just bring him back." Like,
Right,
which would
or
be kind of
whatever.
interesting.
Yeah.
Night Sister magic, spooky stuff.
It's interesting
but-
that he can talk, right? Because he
Well,
spoke
that
the last
too.
episode too. So it's like there's
Yeah,
a lot
true.
of people were really excited, hoping that he'd be Starkiller, the
Yes,
Vader's
I saw that
apprentice
theory.
from those video games. But
Yeah.
I'm okay if they bring that character back, but it has to be in a different way.
Isn't
That's
Starkiller
my
like
opinion.
stupid strong though?
Yes, it's stupid. Exactly.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of problems with how he was portrayed and wouldn't really fit into canon
Right.
in that way now. So
Right.
you'd have to make changes to it.
Yeah.
And that's fine. They've made changes to that kind of stuff before. So the idea of Vader having his own secret apprentice is cool.
Yeah.
Having Ahsoka fight Vader's apprentice would also be cool, but we don't know if that's if this was that version of that. I mean, it's like that's not really that exciting, but there's still
Yeah.
potential. We'll see. Okay, so Sabine, meanwhile, despite Ahsoka kind of easily handling Merrick, Sabine isn't handling things as well. She's kind of on her back foot, and despite her kind of not great positioning here, or at least her ability to not stand up to Shin very well, she sends Ahsoka away to get the map, and which is again splits them up even further, which is kind of
Yes.
that like dum 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 moment, right?
Yeah, they're doing the bad thing that in every scary movie they're not supposed to do.
Right, and then Shin says, "You will regret this decision," which, by the way, I love she might not have a lot of lines of dialogue, but her performance is pretty good because her look of like concern, like shit, like she's going to be able to get back, and
Yeah.
I was supposed to stop them, and now I can't because I have to deal with Sabine. So like, she's now angry, but also worried, also feeling incompetent. There's like a lot happening on her face there. So I think
Yeah.
that's interesting. Back to the henge. As the fourth coordinate is calculated, fourth of 9, Morgan decides to return to the Eye of Sion. Classic villain move, right? Handle this yourselves, right? Leaving Balin to protect the map. Ahsoka arrives just in time to see her ship taking off, and we get this really beautiful shot of the forest with the Eye of Sion in the background, the ship going there, and then the henge kind of in between them. It's really beautiful, and there's like fog along the forest floor. It's really pretty cool. And she then confronts Balin. Balin is waiting. He's wearing his hood, and which I like. I like the idea that he's like, okay, she's coming. I'm gonna put my hood on. I'm gonna wait here. This is gonna be really cool, right? And so he starts the dialogue first. I basically wrote down almost everything they said here because I think it's all interesting.
It's all pretty important, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he says at first, Anakin spoke highly of you. Her response is, of course, that, oh, really? He never mentioned you, which I think is both funny as like a retort here, but also like a kind of like a meta commentary on the fact that we keep including new Jedi who
Yeah.
survive Order 66, who were
Right.
supposedly around during all that time, but we never met them or never knew who they were.
Yeah.
Right. So I think
feel
that's
like it's also a very Ahsoka thing to say. Like that's an OG Ahsoka thing to say for
right.
sure.
Yeah, 100%. And as he does this, he removes his cloak, which is really cool. Anytime that like, it reminds me of Obi-Wan dropping his cloak and standing with his hands on his hips, right? You know,
Yeah.
you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Revenge of the Sith. So,
Yes.
yeah, very, really cool move. Anytime you remove your Jedi robe, you know shit's about to go down, right? And he starts talking more about Anakin, saying that everyone at the Jedi Temple knew who Anakin was, and saying that he was that very few survived to see what he became.
Right.
Interesting that he's aware of that. I feel like that knowledge would
Okay.
not be well,
That's what I said.
understood.
And I was just like, that was the only thing that really bugged
Well,
me
actually,
about this
it
episode.
depends on the timeline. It depends on exactly when this happens. And I don't know. So in the book Bloodlines by Claudia Gray, which is a great book about Leia kind of trying to figure out the New Republic government and all this stuff. And her son and her husband and all this stuff. But
right.
in that book, one of the things that she has to handle is the fact that it becomes public knowledge that Vader was her father.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Right. So, but again, like, I guess right. So that I don't remember all the details. Presumably, the name Anakin Skywalker would have become more well known. It's unclear when along the timeline that would have happened in comparison to the show.
Right.
Maybe we didn't do enough research, but it's possible that public knowledge became, widely known, and that's how he knows. It also seems like he knows a lot, and maybe he just does a lot of research.
Yeah, that's true. He's just a smart dude. Yeah. I don't know, because that's kind of the one thing that I was like, well, how the fuck does he know that? Like,
yeah.
And I guess like what Vader's been dead for quite a few years,
long time now. Yeah.
At this point, yeah, like probably close to 10 years or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yep.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. It is what it is. He knows. Okay, somehow.
So, in using that knowledge, he says like, hey, knowing now what he became, is that the reason that you left him and abandoned him? Right, using the term abandoned him, which of course is a term that very loaded word.
Oh,
abandoned.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And part of it is that she's carrying guilt that maybe if she'd stayed, that wouldn't have happened. And so he's definitely hitting the right buttons here. This guy, very Palpatine-esque in his use of language to kind of again, press buttons, manipulate people, get them off their game a little bit. She says she's not there to talk about her past and removes her own cloak now. And you're like, oh shit. Okay. And then his retort is, the only reason I'm here is to secure the future, which, not my favorite line, a little silly, but he says it's not for himself. And she says that's ambitious. And he says that's necessary.
Right.
Again, very coded language, very cryptic, but also, again, very samurai style. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
He says that he's not starting a war, but Thrawn will, and that it's an unfortunate evil that speaks to a larger truth that one must destroy to enable to create.
Right.
Which is a common villain trope. This is one of those ideas that it's this universal truth that if you don't believe that, then you're fooling yourself, right? That
right.
To for the New Republic to work, you have to destroy the Empire, right?
Yeah,
which is part of the reason that the New Republic fails, is because the Empire wasn't completely destroyed.
Yes.
Which of course is something that they explore in this show, and they'll continue to explore going forward. But so it has some roots of truth, but again it's that one of those absolutes, right?
Right.
That and only Sith deal absolutes.
To me though, I just feel like he's talking about something bigger. I feel like he's just alluding to that I don't know. I keep just having this, but it's because I've read more of the Thrawn books and I know a little bit more about him and his character and stuff, and it's just I feel like there's a bigger bad that isn't just going to be Thrawn coming back. And it's Baylan knows this and they're bringing Thrawn back for another reason, right?
So you think that there's a possibility that Thrawn ends up working with the New Republic against another some sort of larger, worse enemy,
Maybe like maybe they're these guys are. I don't know. I just
the
think
Yuuzhan
it's
Vong or something like in that vein.
yeah, like that, or there's also like the Gris that are in
Yes, the
some of the
unknown
books.
regions. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that they're bad guys too. I don't know. I don't know if it's them or not, but I know what, maybe they are just bringing it back because they think he can bring the Empire back to its full glory. But I don't know. To me, it just feels like
Yeah, but why does he
Balin.
care about that?
That's what I mean. Why would Balin care about that? And why would Thrawn give a shit about that? Like to
He
me,
keeps
it's like
talking
there's
about.
something else. And
He
like
keeps talking.
Balin's alluding to this other. I don't know. I just feel like in this conversation with Ahsoka, he's like, well,
Yeah.
Thrawn's going to start a war, but it's for another reason. Like it's
Well,
for the
he
greater
says it's
good.
a greater. There's a greater good.
Yes.
He says
Yeah.
that it's going to give them power such as they've never seen.
Yes.
There's just like I
Yeah.
really truly don't know what's in it for him.
Yeah,
Right?
it's interesting. So
And that's what's fascinating about it. So
Yeah.
I mean, and again, alluding to it, but just in the most vague ways possible.
yeah, I just feel like there's more to it. Like I don't. It's not just like Thrawn's going to come back and we're going to bring back the Empire. I
Right, and
think
like, what do
there's
you
more
mean? And
to
like,
it.
destroy. Okay, so destroy the New Republic to create what? Like, what are these?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? here?
Exactly.
Right.
And like why? Like, who like it's you've already
Right.
lost. There's already these remnants. Like what are they keeping you from being able to do so much? Your weird
Yeah,
little
I don't know.
splinter
There's just
cell,
really
right?
there's a
Like
lot of really big question marks still
yeah.
that the show has now 4 episodes to resolve, right?
Mhm.
And so, lots of time. We'll see.
Yeah.
Um I like how as soon as he says this very like traditional like villain twist your mustache as you talk about your big plan moment, she's
Yes.
like, "Okay, I've heard enough," and just lights her lightsaber up.
Yeah.
Um and of course, one of the most iconic lines of this episode, which is how inevitable, when he
Mhm.
returns on his own lightsaber, and it's like so cool because again, meta a little bit, where it's like it's inevitable. Of course they're gonna fight, right?
Yeah.
It's
Oh yeah.
from a just a pure like, imagine if these characters met and then never had a sword fight. Like that would be silly, right?
Yeah.
So it is inevitable in that way, but also I just like this idea that there's just like this, that Ahsoka as this kind of beacon of good has no choice but to confront him. And so, he was hoping that there would be some way to convince her or whatever, but that ultimately he knew that there was no answer for that.
Right.
So they also slowly take, again, more posing, but they slowly take their fighting stances. She's once again using a single saber, and then we get this really cool fight sequence, lightsaber duel that is this idea that there's lots of YouTube videos about, like, what if a samurai fought a knight, or what if
Right, yeah.
a Genghis Khan fought or whatever. So like all
Yeah.
these ideas. This is very much that, but just with a Star Wars lens,
Yeah.
right? So what if a samurai in Ahsoka fought
Yes.
a broadsword wielding knight,
Yeah. Yeah.
in armor from the Middle Ages. So
Right.
it's knight versus it's katana versus broadsword, speed versus strength,
Yeah.
and it's really cool.
Do you think his armor looks like it's from the Clone Wars era? Because he's got like not the I don't know what you call them, pauldrons, but he's got like the shoulder pads, and they kind of have almost like a similar shape to what like
I don't
Obi-Wan
know.
and
I
Anakin
feel
sort of
like
looked like back then.
that he would have been too young to have a suit of to get one of those clone armor.
Yeah,
like
for
that was
anything,
like for
yeah.
generals, I feel like.
Yeah, but we don't know how old this dude is.
Well, I guess he's got gray hair, gray beard. It's possible he was a general.
Yeah.
In the Clone Wars.
Anakin was.
Yeah, it's true. But but he was.
I know.
Yeah, but he was on the council, but not given the right of the rank
yeah,
of master.
Yeah.
I was actually, speaking of that, I was hoping we would see Anakin in his Clone Wars armory outfit.
Oh,
Like when I saw him, like, oh, it's kind of disappointing that we didn't get to see him in that outfit, because again, it's one of those.
We see him in his Force Ghost outfit from Episode 6.
That's true. It's his his go-to
black
outfit, basically.
Yeah.
Tunic, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, because the texture's all wrong and some of that stuff. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like it has that right look to it.
Yeah. He's got like a really neat. I don't know whether it's armor or not, but like down his spine, he's got these really cool. I don't know, little designs on his back.
Yeah, it's really
that
cool.
go down his
Everything
spine
about
is very
this
neat.
character, I just don't think we can say enough cool stuff
Yeah.
about Balin.
Yeah, there's one point where he's standing next to Morgan Elsbeth, and he looks huge standing next to her. Like, I think he's just a big person in
Yes,
general.
he is a big person. Yeah.
But and then with that added extra kind of not bulky armor, but the extra big like kind
the
of
armor
shoulder
adds weight.
armor.
Yeah, it's size to his shoulders, and it's
yeah,
really cool.
but he just looks massive. But it's very imposing.
So, meanwhile, back on the eye, the 5th of the 9 coordinates are calculated. Morgan is getting impatient and asks how much longer. We get that great moment I mentioned earlier. Moments. Just moments. Back at the saber fight, we get a force rock throw, which is always fun. She cuts that in half. It looked a little CG-y, but
right.
I
sure
won't
it
complain
was.
too much. Well, 100% was, but I just like, because she's not cutting rocks in half with her fake lightsaber. But I would make it look a little bit more. I always think when that stuff happens, I always just think of that line from The Last Jedi that the Force is more about is more than just lifting rocks,
yes.
right? And so anyway, he throws the rock. She cuts through it, and this move continues. I saw a couple people shout out the this move where he like does a defensive motion and then like steps back and then like slashes backwards. It's a pretty cool move. But again, like you really get the sense of like his strength as he's like really wailing against her. And it's an interesting dynamic too in the fight because his goal is to just prevent her from getting to the map. Right. He's not really trying to kill her.
No, I don't think he is.
Yeah, but like she just needs to get to the map. So there's kind of this different dynamic. She isn't really trying to confront him as much as get around him to get to the map. So it just creates this kind of more different dynamic. It is cool. Back at the forest, Sabine and Shin continue their saber duel of their own with a great shot of Sabine's helmet in the forest floor in the foreground we mentioned before. And Sabine has her saber knocked out of her hands, uses her Beskar armor gauntlets to defend herself against another strike from Shin before falling and trying to do a force push, revealing her lack of force abilities. I love the force push. Shin goes kind of like to block it, or like she like covers her face. It's such a cool motion where she's like, "What the fuck?"
This is what I was going to ask about. And this is what I asked Adam, and like we couldn't figure it out either. Did Sabine lightly force slap her, and that's why she turns her head, or that's what I said, or is she turning her head in anticipation
to protect herself,
of a blow, and then she doesn't feel it, and that because either way, is it either like she was anticipating a bigger thing, and then she's like, okay, so you have
I
no
think
power,
it's that
or
one.
she got a little slap, and she was just like,
I don't think she got a little slap. I
was wondering if she got a force slap, and that's why she like whips her
It is funny to think that there's potential that she got a force slap, but I don't think that's what it is.
Yeah, fair enough.
I like the idea that she still isn't able to because how cliche would it be? It's like, oh, when push comes to shove, here's the moment, and boom, force push.
Right. Yeah.
Again, so
you hope that if she does connect to the force at some point, it's cooler than just a little bitch slap.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I like the idea that she kind of goes to protect herself, realizes that there's nothing.
Yeah.
There's nothing coming, and then I love Shin's performance here.
It's great.
The actress, I've got to find her name, Ivana Sakno.
Yeah,
it's a tough name.
I feel like she's like every line she delivers is so full of rage.
It's
half
sharp.
The time.
Yeah,
it's very good.
Yeah, I agree. And so here's my question here: is she surprised or angry that she has no power? Is she saying you have no power to like demean her, or is it like you have no power? Question mark.
No,
how do you
I think
read
it's
that?
more like to demean her. Like it's more of a like a how dare you even try?
Yeah, right. Like how are you even keeping up with me? This is
exactly.
I get it. You have no right to wield that saber. You don't have any power.
Exactly.
Right. Okay, I like that. I prefer that interpretation than like the surprise version. But anyway, I don't
think she's surprised. I think it's
Well, I think she is surprised.
Oh, well,
I think she did think that she had some sort of force ability, but because she was able to hold her own, right? But now she's angry, and then again using that to kind of demean her.
Yeah.
So this gives Sabine an opening, this angry moment, and she uses her wrist rocket to surprise Shin, shoots her saber out of her hand, right? And before anything can happen, and I don't know why they cut away from this. They cut away first and then come back. But before anything can happen, she, smoke bomb
Right.
and disappears, right? The smoke bomb, by the way, smoke bombs are cool. Anytime they're used, I don't know how practical they really are, like how much, because you just have to back up 3 or 4 feet and be like, oh, there you are.
Yeah.
But either way, it doesn't matter. Anytime they're used, whether it's the Ninja Turtles or here or literally anywhere, smoke bomb and then you're out is cool.
I mean, I would love to exit a place like that.
Boom.
At least once in my life.
I feel like is it Arrested Development or something else? I feel like
Job has those things all the time, like smoke bombs, or he's shooting fire out of his wrists, or the things that just don't go well for him.
Yeah. I feel like no, but there's a character that's says smoke bomb. They don't have one. They just say it.
Is
and
it
it's
Tony Wonder?
Maybe I don't know, but it's really I don't even know if it's from that show, but it might be. That's what I think of. It's funny. Anyway, so they take off. Back at the henge, Ahsoka and Baylan are still fighting. Baylan has Ahsoka on the ropes a little bit, telling her that, quote, her legacy, just like her master's, is one of death and destruction. What do you think he's getting at here?
I'm not 100% sure, actually. Yeah, I don't know, because it's just what has Ahsoka done that would say that her legacy is death and destruction? But yeah.
I guess it's possible that he's implying that it's her fault,
right?
That Vader made the decisions that he did, that you abandoned him, and that because of that, you allowed a monster to be unleashed.
Yeah.
Now, I think that's the most generous interpretation I have for this, because otherwise it just feels like it's a line that comes out of nowhere. Because again, it's not like she's really done anything specifically.
No, unless he just means I'm going to kill you, and that's your legacy of you died, and then
death,
that's
and
it.
I guess.
I don't know.
Maybe maybe it's just maybe it's a threat. I don't know. I would like to hear what people have to think about that. I'm not sure. Kind of what he's
didn't really
there.
Clock that as much as you did there, or think about it.
Well, it's a cool idea that a legacy of death and destruction, which the Jedi ultimately carry
right
with them. So maybe that's what he's getting at, and that he's separated himself from that, and that she's still connecting herself to it. I don't know. There's lots of different ways you can interpret it, I guess. Right. Okay, so Ahsoka is able to get a hit in. This gives her a chance to grab the map, but it burns her hand. What's your thoughts on the hand burning?
Yeah, see, because I think, Morgan Elsbeth kind of had to use, or was using her witchy powers with it. I don't know, maybe once it's doing its thing, it just is hot.
It gets really hot.
Is kind of all I was thinking, is once
it's interesting. I feel like it's more of I don't know, my because it really affects her, right? She grabs it and it's and she's really messed up in the hand.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm wondering if it's an allergic reaction to dark side.
Oh,
powers.
Dark magic or dark.
Yeah,
that's true. Could be, because I mean, I feel like when Sabine,
she picks it up, it's no problem.
Yeah, when she gets that map open, it's no issue. But I don't know, it's been open for longer, heats up like a laptop.
yeah, I guess. Yeah, I don't know.
Like an old computer.
I guess that the flame is hot. It's unclear.
Oh, right, because there's a flame under it too.
Yeah,
I forgot about the flame.
I would assume green, magic.
The flame. Yeah.
Okay.
Probably that.
So maybe
it's
that, but also it's unclear if that magic flame is actually flame or it's just magic.
That's true.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah,
but I like your interpretation of that. It's a mix of, that the dark energy of it, right? Mm-hmm. I like that.
Okay. So Ahsoka, now hurting and on her heels, sees Shin return. This obviously makes her worried about Sabine's fate.
Right.
And interestingly, has a little bit of lets a little anger out, uses a force push, and knocks Shin against the wall, knocks her out.
Well, she chokes her. She has her fully
by the neck and then throws her against the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it.
It's pretty wild. She's lucky she didn't die.
Yeah.
Your neck wasn't broken or whatever.
Well, she didn't go full. Yeah. Neck.
Yeah, because she could have just reached out and just snapped her neck, I guess.
Yeah.
Right. That's always, I guess, always a move available to you if you're a strong Jedi / Sith, is you could just
right,
breaknecks
which they
at
have
will.
done. But I guess I don't know. I feel like I always wonder, like, why don't they all just like snap each other's necks all the time? But A, then there'd be no stories ever,
Yeah,
and B, I think to them it's I don't know.
it feels
It,
cheap. I
yeah,
think.
if exactly, it feels
Yeah,
cheap. Yeah, yeah.
but again, why can't they fly? Whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe like
The
the
Inquisitors can.
best Jedi of all. Yeah, but that's also dumb. Like, so I'm
Because
so
there's
glad that we've
no
never. Could you imagine if they brought that into live action and we're
yeah.
gonna be like, we're gonna have these Inquisitors floating around? No
Because
way.
air isn't alive, so you can't manipulate the air
But you can.
as
But you
much.
are,
Yeah, I don't know. It's
and
too
you can
much.
force jump and all these other things that you can.
Yeah, force jump like to a point.
Well, what's the difference between a force jump, using the force
Gravity.
to how did you lift? How did she lift Shin up against gravity?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't even know how airplanes work, okay? So don't
Oh,
ask me.
yeah. There's a whole thing for that. But like maybe the thing with the lightsabers is that like it heats up the air and then it like uses it's like they're like floating on like a heat thing. I don't know. It's stupid.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's because it's too complicated if they can make Jedi fly.
It doesn't. They didn't need to fly. They didn't
Does it-
need to be able to have the ability to have those lightsabers make them fly. That was always dumb.
Oh,
I'm
the
sorry.
Inquisitors. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
dumb. I think that
Yeah.
was a mistake the second they did it. But
yeah. Okay, I agree. As long as we
it's funny.
agree on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't need Jedi to fly. I just think it's funny to like. It's a funny question to ask. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of like how Sabine 2 episodes ago was like, or is it maybe last episode? Is like, listen, if the force is with
Right.
everybody, why doesn't everybody use it?
Yeah, exactly.
So, by the way, our explanation of like it's like pro athletes versus like the regular Joe,
Yeah.
is also the same way that, someone at Lucasfilm, it was either George Lucas or Dave Filoni
Oh, really?
described it very similarly to that in like that similar way.
I
So
like it.
I feel like I feel like I feel
nailed
justified in that. Yeah,
it. Yeah.
exactly, nailed it.
Yeah.
Okay, so Balin, angered by Ahsoka's attack on Shin, says that, quote, it didn't have to come to this, before trying to make a final blow against Ahsoka, who's holding his saber back with the Force at the edge of a cliff. Sabine, very shortly after, arrives. Ahsoka yells for her to destroy it, which, does this remind you of any moment, by the way? From anything else? No? Okay.
I don't know. I don't think
So first thing it makes, I think, for anyone who's watched Lord of the Rings will probably remember it.
Oh, okay.
But remember when in the very first movie, in the prologue, when after the battle with Sauron, which, by the
Yes.
way, we already have the Eye of Sauron reference in this
Yeah.
show, so it's like another Lord of the Rings reference is fine. And then you have Elrond and Isildur
Yeah.
in Mount Doom, and he yells, "Destroy it!" Right?
Yeah.
That's what I thought
I
of
think I'll
when
keep it.
right. And
Yeah.
it's so wild to me. It's like everyone's like, "Okay, cool. You just keep that super deadly weapon.
Yeah.
No big deal." Destroy it, Isildur! Destroy it! It's like such a cool moment.
Yeah.
So that's what I think of here. And Sabine, destroy it, and she doesn't. Again, she's the Isildur of this story. Which, by the way, keeping the thing ultimately is Isildur's downfall. Is how he ends up getting killed. So Sabine then threatens to destroy the map, pointing her gun at it, which seemed weird. Like, are you going to shoot through it into your hand, or like how's that going to work? But
right.
yeah. So it's like holding something and having a gun in front of it, like, and you would. It's like it's for sure gonna shoot your hand. Is there no other way to hold it so you didn't shoot yourself? Anyway, whatever. So this is enough to make Balin pause for a moment. It looks like he's gonna step away from Ahsoka, but at that moment he makes a final blow against her saber. I thought that maybe he connected with her body in some way. I rewatched it.
No.
He does not. Ultimately connecting with her saber, but pushing her off the cliff.
Yeah.
And we don't see what happens to her at this moment, but it's a pretty deadly looking cliff. So
yeah, but okay. Here's my thing. She's obviously not dead. Like I don't think she's dead. because
Yeah, but did she get pulled into the world between worlds again? Because that seems
I think she's
very convenient.
unconscious, either in the water or like I don't know,
I don't think so.
hit
I
the
think
water,
this is
is
more.
unconscious, washed up on the shore, whatever.
This is much more supernatural than that.
True, but Ahsoka has also survived jumping off a crashing plane into the atmosphere on Mandalore into like a
Yeah,
superhero jump. Like she's not going to get killed by being booted off a cliff. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
No, I agree. But there's a
Like
really big rock down there, so I don't know
yeah,
if that
but when
matters.
Ahsoka, if and when she does eventually die, Dave Filoni's not going to give her like he's going to give her a better death than that. I think.
I think you're probably right.
I don't think she's
I
dead.
think
I just think
she.
she's
I don't think she. But maybe I like the idea that maybe she is dead, but like she's gonna come back to life again in some
yeah.
way. So
she's going to keep bringing her back.
I
Every
don't know.
time.
Maybe like and then the question is like, okay, then what can kill her?
Well,
right?
this is what I mean.
So,
Like she's in limbo. Like maybe she's on death's door, but I don't think she's actually dead yet.
we'll see.
Yeah.
So your belief, and we'll get to this later, but it sounds like your belief is that she's not talking to Anakin and actually talking to Anakin, but she's this is all in her mind.
I do think she's in the world between worlds. I just think that maybe that's kind of someplace you go when you die. You know?
Maybe.
I just don't think that I think that there's a lot more to that.
Let me pull up the Wikipedia definition of the world between worlds,
Yeah.
also known as the Vergence Scatter, which I don't remember
Okay.
ever being called that, but
Yeah.
that's what it says here.
'Cause,
Was
yeah,
a mystical plane within the Force that served as a collection of doors and pathways existing between time and space, linking all moments in time together.
Yeah.
So
if it's all moments in times, past, present, and future, then it's kind of like limbo because that would be, your life and death.
right. So Darth Sidious says this mystical realm connects all of time and space, creating a conduit between the living and the dead.
Yeah.
Those who control this plane would possess mastery over all of existence, but gaining access has proven an unexpected challenge. So,
yeah, I don't know.
The world between worlds, otherwise referred to as the Vergence Scatter, was described within the Chain Worlds Theorem, visualized in the sacred Jedi text kept within the Jedi Temple on the planet Ahch-To. It was accessible from a painting of the Mortis gods, father, daughter, and son, that decorated the exterior of the Jedi Temple on the planet Lothal. Loth wolves, creatures native to Lothal, were intrinsically tied to the world between worlds and were capable of traveling through the realm in a similar manner to hyperspace travel. That sentence is dumb. The Mortis gods' painting served as the key to unveiling the entryway to the realm through the assistance from a keystone from the temple by a force wielder who was to place their hand on the daughter's encircled hand. As a result, the Loth wolves within the painting shifted away from the gods and moved in a circle together, which formed a portal to the realm. However, the portal to the world between worlds was closed if a force wielder placed their hand on the son's encircled fist, which prompted the painting of the father to conceal the entryway and the temple itself. So you can see that happen in the Rebels.
Yeah.
Not the finale, but like 2 episodes before.
Right.
Anyway.
This is why I kind of think that she Ahsoka's been there before. She's literally been pulled out of it. So maybe she's just got a little bit more of a connection to it than others.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of question marks about what just happened at the end of this episode.
Yeah.
We'll
we should see. Yeah, makes me excited for next week.
Yes, good. So. That's good. We're looking for excitement is what we're looking for.
Because originally I was just like, oh, cool. I'm like, how'd she get there?
Right. And it also looks really cool in live action. Yeah. I always knew it was going to look cool because it's not that hard to like visualize a starry sky with some cool pathways, but it's cool. They achieve a look that somehow makes it not look stupid, but it's similar to what it looked like in the animated series. So,
yeah.
Okay, so back in the land of the living, Sabine tries to shoot Baylan, but this is right after Ahsoka presumably dies. She tries to shoot Baylan, but he easily deflects her blast. I love the way he kind of like moves his saber in this like very like stiff but almost like angular motion to deflect it. I also like how his saber seems to be a little bit longer, which is pretty cool. Easily deflects it. Baylan then, this is so cool. She decides to threaten the map again. This causes Baylan to pause, but he then uses her insecurities against her. This is another example of like very classic, like Palpatine style moves. Like it's almost like, did you learn from the best here or what? Because he even says, "Do it." at some point.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
Well, and I am curious because you know how like they kind of touch on this a little bit in the Jedi, not Fallen Order, Jedi Fallen Order,
Survivor.
Jedi
Jedi
Survivor, whatever.
Survivor. Yeah.
Kind of how like different Jedi have different force abilities, right?
Sure.
Um, and I don't know. To me, it's like maybe Balin's got a little bit more of that kind of. He can look into people's minds a
Well, we
little
know that
bit.
people can do that, right? We know Kylo can
Yeah,
do that. We
yeah,
saw that.
yeah,
Uh, not Hux. Imagine Hux. No.
yeah. So I mean, yeah, he can
yeah.
pull things out of people. I think
Yeah.
so because there's just sometimes things that he said that I'm like, how does he know so
He
much
can't.
about
It's like
everybody?
seems weird that he would know, right? So
Yeah,
maybe he's just really in tune
yeah.
with like reading minds, as a
Reading, yeah,
possibility,
people's like
right?
feelings and yeah,
Like, and
exactly.
the Jedi have always been kind of like borderline abusive about that ability anyway,
Right.
with the whole Jedi mind trick. So
Yeah.
you know, so he says you should destroy it, which this is such classic Palpatine to me. It's like
Hmm.
telling them, yeah, cut me down, right? Do it,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? You should destroy it. She would have, right? Again, making her feel like she's lesser than.
Yeah.
Oh,
Inadequate.
you aren't like her. She says that we're more like than you think. I know you think Ezra Bridger is the only family you have left. I thought this line again clunky in my opinion, but if you can explain it by them saying that she was able to read her mind and reveal this truth,
Yeah,
then
I
it's
feel
more
like
interesting.
he's just very good at pulling stuff out of people's minds like that.
Right. And so we also could learn something interesting here, which is your family died on Mandalore because your master didn't trust you.
Yeah.
So we learn that the reason that the Wren family isn't by the way, there's a whole wild theory. I don't know if you watched this video on Screen Crush.
I have not.
About how Sabine's brother somehow survived the Night of a Thousand Tears and establishes the Knights of Ren, but drops the W.
It's dumb.
Yeah, I also agree. It's dumb.
Why?
But they make a really strong argument. So I don't know. Don't worry about it.
Whatever. It's
so
stupid.
well, they do have. It's like, and they even say, like the dog in that even says it's like, that's silly. You're just saying that because it sounds the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is it? There's like the line, whatever, to go off on a tangent. Like in the office when Michael thinks he's being shaken down by the mob, because it's like a salesman and he's like super Italian and his last name's Grotti. And everyone's like, his last name's Grotti. And then other people in the office are like, yeah, but why would they do that? Gotti, like, sullies the name. It weakens it to just change it slightly.
Right. You're right. You're right. That's actually, see, you know what? You've solved it. It can't be what it is. Anyway, so it's tragic to find out that her mother and her brother and other parts of her family.
Of course,
by the way,
yeah.
completely forgot she had a brother until they brought it up in that video, but she does.
Yes.
He's so generic looking. He looks like the most generic dude.
Yeah,
like,
he does.
Yeah.
You're right.
Anyway, so he says that they died because your master didn't trust you. So that line also doesn't, like, maybe we need to learn more about that and that'll be revealed, but
right.
It does seem like a stretch. Like, well, the Empire destroyed your family. How does that have anything to do with Ahsoka's choices?
Well, that's what I mean. That's why, like, he just knows so much and he knows too much. So I'm like, he's got to have some kind of.
Well, again, playing on her insecurities. Maybe that's what she feels like.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And he's saying, and he's like reinforcing it. That, well, telling her what she wants to hear. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
He says that we share a common goal, right? To go on this voyage, right? For you, it's to find your long lost friend. For me, it's to serve a greater good. We talked about this earlier. Unclear what the greater good means here.
Yes.
He says, "Give me the map, and I give you my word, no harm will come to you." And again, this is like classic, like Palpatine shit, right? Like, this. I'll give you what you want if you give me what I want, and everything will work out fine.
Yeah.
Right. Nothing. We don't have to resort to stabbing each other or shooting each other when we really just want the same thing anyway.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
And besides, Ahsoka's dead and she didn't like you very much. So
yeah. The only difference is here he actually, I don't know, if it was a Palpatine, he would have just killed her, right? As soon as he got there.
Possibly, unless he thought he could use her for something.
Right, and that's what I'm curious about is like, because he doesn't harm her, right? And they do take her with them, so it's like I'm curious why he thinks she'd be useful. But
well, maybe he really does want to. He really does stand by his word, and that's
Yeah,
like his
yeah.
word of his is like like a knight. That my word is my bond,
Oh,
or whatever,
yeah.
right? So he says it's the only way. Do it
Yeah.
for Ezra, you know. So I it's good stuff. I like it. I like the inclusion of "do it." I feel like that's not an accident, you
Yeah, of
know.
course, of course.
So right, I use that probably at least once a week.
To
Do
do
it,
it.
yeah,
Adam
all
does
the
it all
time.
the time too. It must be a guy thing.
It's so funny.
All the time.
No, it's not the Jedi way. Oh, whiny Anakin.
Do it. Yeah.
Do it. So she gives him the map. She kind of, it's really interesting watching her face here. She's obviously conflicted, but but he's playing on her insecurities, and it works, and she's really thinking about Ezra and thinking, if I do destroy this map, I'll never get to see him again. And she
Yeah.
couldn't bring herself to do that, which I think is understandable. It's relatable. She gives him the map, but surprise, surprise, Shin wakes up and just starts to force choke
Yeah.
force choke the shit out of her, which is
Yeah.
those words together are harder to say than it would seem. But Balin has her stand down, saying, "I gave her my word, and unlike her former master, I will keep mine." What word is it that Ahsoka gave that she couldn't keep? That she would protect her?
I guess. Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, yeah. I don't know.
Either way, it's cool.
Yeah.
Like, so it's interesting. So Balin restarts the map transmission. Morgan sends a ship to pick them up. I kind of thought that she was going to leave without them. You know?
Oh yeah, just
You
like
guys kind of like double cross them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, oh, we got what we need. Bye.
No,
But
I
it's
think she
more
still
interesting
needs
that
their help.
she kind of like, no. These are valuable assets to her.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
All right. Any final thoughts on this fight sequence and what happens with Sabine?
No, I don't
or
think
anything else?
so. I'm
Okay.
like, I just think, yeah, no, I kind of like we said, it's just I want to know how he knows so fucking much about everybody. It's just in everybody's business.
Right. Yeah. Mind your own business. Who asked you?
Yeah.
All right. So back at the T6, and with Hu Yang, he's been able to fix the transmitter and received a transmission from Hera. He asked for help, but Hera's already arrived, and great timing. Hu Yang gives them kind of the latest info, gives them the download on what's going on, and then the Ghost and her squadron of X-wings, quote unquote, cut across the axis, which is a cool term, to cut off the path of the Eye of Sion as it's trying to leave atmosphere. Back at the Henge, the calculations have complete. Balin destroys the map with his saber, which is really cool. Like the way he just like destroys it super quickly.
Yeah.
Really badass. I just wish that people did more cool stuff with sabers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he just like, that scene in episode 1 when they're cutting open the door on that trade
Yes.
ship.
Yeah.
Like that's super cool. Why don't we see more of that kind of stuff? You know?
Yeah.
Like that's just a little side thing. It's just like, you have lightsabers, let's use them for like more
For
cool
everything.
shit. Yeah, that's if you had a lightsaber, you'd use it for cool
beers
shit all the
with them.
time.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right?
Yeah. Why aren't
Open
you
more
cooking
beers
with them?
Yeah, a little knife-sized one. Very handy.
Yeah.
So they load onto their ship and leave for the Eye, destroying the map, saying no one will be following us. Classic villain stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And on the Eye, they are powering up the hyperspace drives and basically ready to jump immediately. They're wasting no time. Let's get to it, right? Up in space, Carson Teva uses the classic line to lock S-foils in attack position on the X-wings. It's funny that they're called S-foils, don't you think?
Yeah, that is weird.
Yeah. It's always been weird to me, but I guess it doesn't matter. Anyway, the squadron is made up of a Rhodian in a green helmet that says they aren't launching fighters, and then a human in a white and green helmet that says, I don't think they're sticking around for a fight. So they make, again, the idea that they're made up of kind of like different squadrons.
Yeah.
So here are the 4 people playing them. So we have Michael Christian Alexander playing Lieutenant Basie. I think that is the Rhodian, I'm guessing. Then you have Dawn Diniger playing Lieutenant Mowat. Then Chow Naomova playing Lieutenant Jensen. And last but not least, This one you might actually recognize. Brendan Wayne playing Lieutenant Lander. So do you know who Brendan Wayne is? Does that name ring a bell?
No, it does not.
Brendan Wayne is the body actor for Din Djarin. He's in the suit. Not there's multiple ones, but he's like one of the main ones.
Gotcha. Okay.
So he now gets his face is actually on screen. And so he's one of the pilots here. I thought that one of them died after the ship jumps to hyperspace, but it just looks like one's crashing into the down into atmosphere.
I thought two like crash into each other and explode.
Yeah, they do. They do crash into each other and explode. I watched this again, but like the cockpit doesn't explode.
Okay.
So yeah. I think they're okay. At least like not dead.
Because it's I like what they did here because obviously you see they're all right in front of hyperspace because it's a circle. Like it's a ring.
Yes.
The ring goes around them. So like
yes, it's super cool.
It's really because I'm like, how did they not just all explode? But I'm like, oh, the ship didn't actually like go through them like Amilyn Holdo style. Yes. It technically kind of went through them but around them.
I don't know if this was on purpose because it felt like as someone who's a Last Jedi defender, especially for the Holdo maneuver, which is super cool.
Yes.
When they're like, ignore them, jump to hyperspace, and then Sabine's like, Hera, and then we see them like in front of the ship, and like those like giant cones are like womp 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 womp, and then I'm like, oh shit, they're gonna get Holdo maneuvered, and I'm like, we saw what happened when that went down, but then even more excitingly, it goes around them, which is really badass.
It's really cool. Yeah. I liked it. I was like, oh man, that's such a cool way to use the fact that it's like a ring, and I don't know, it's
exactly
very cool. Yeah.
Yep. So this hyperspace jump is so powerful that it creates this like wave and tumbles the squadron. Like I said, two X-wings collide and explode, though again likely survive the pilots. Looks like everyone survives, but one ship looks like it's crashing to the surface, so we'll see what happens there. And then there's this like lingering tear in space, like this little like blue smudge, which is really cool. Yeah. And then we get the line from Jason, Mom, I've got a bad feeling.
Yeah.
Which I guess you have to have technically by law.
Of course.
But
someone's got to say it at some point.
Meanwhile, Sabine's like, holy shit, I thought my son was going to die.
Yeah. Like, oh man, maybe I shouldn't have brought you.
Yeah, that was dumb. I'm going to drop you off, and we're never talking about this again.
Yeah.
Never tell anyone about this. Otherwise, they'll think I'm a terrible parent.
Yeah.
So, any other comments on that?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Then we just get to the
the meat. The cool part. So Hu Yang is calling Sabine and Ahsoka, but gets no response. Kind of sad, actually. And then we cut back to the now empty henge, showing us a top-down view of the cliff where Ahsoka fell, panning to a close-up of Ahsoka's face as she wakes up in the world between worlds, or otherwise known as, sorry, what was it called? The Virgins Scatter, And she hears the voice of Anakin saying, "Hello, Snips." Obviously, that's his little pet name for her.
Yeah.
She's obviously surprised, saying "Master?" ? And then he responds with, "I didn't expect to see you so soon," which does imply he seems to imply that she's dead, right?
Well, right. But yeah, to me, it's like, oh, like so she was always going to show up.
It's like too
here
obvious,
if
though.
She died.
Right?
Yeah, it is way too obvious. So I think that's kind of like the hint, where it's like this isn't your time yet.
Right.
You're not supposed to be here yet.
Yeah. Then she turns and we see a de-aged Hayden Christensen, which nice of them to actually use the de-aging technology this time.
Yeah.
Instead of the weird mental gymnastics I had to go through to watch old Hayden Christensen pretend to be young Hayden Christensen.
Well, they smoothed some of his wrinkles, but not enough of them.
Is that true that they use some tech for that, or is it just makeup?
Yeah, because I feel like I saw clips of them like filming that scene, and he had like the dots on him. So did Obi-Wan. Yeah, they had the dots on their faces for like where the CGI.
Okay, well maybe they'll improve that show by actually fixing all the terrible CG that's in it. So maybe that'll help.
Yeah, but I mean they ramped it up. Obviously, maybe they heard all the complaints. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, he didn't look young.
Well,
If
yeah.
that was what you're going for, you failed. I
I
think
feel
that's
like no
that's
matter
the
what,
message.
that de-aging still looks weird.
I don't know. It looked perfectly fine to me here, to be
Yeah,
honest.
it just
But he also didn't
looks
speak. That's always a big when they move their lips.
speaks.
Is
Oh
yeah,
yeah. But yeah, it looked fine. Like I have no issue with it. But yeah,
yeah. And also, if he's a Force ghost, you can kind of get away with it or
yeah,
whatever
they're
how it works.
blurrier.
So yeah. So we say D.H. Hayden Christensen returning as a young Anakin Skywalker from the Clone Wars era, wearing, as you mentioned, his black tunic,
Mm-hmm.
smiling warmly, and she says Anakin, and then we see Ahsoka's shocked face before cutting back to Anakin. Cutting to black as we hear
Yeah.
Vader's theme play. Which,
Mhm.
by the way, the subtitles totally gave that away. I
I
probably
know.
wouldn't have noticed it the first time, but it's like Vader's theme
Yeah.
plays, and it's like, okay, well, you really hit the nail on the head with that one. It's weird, like they don't call out any other theme that's playing.
That's true. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's like just seemed a little heavy-handed. They really wanted because I think we can all recognize when we hear Vader's theme.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? At this
Yeah, it's
point,
like the most
so I don't know if we needed that,
recognizable one. Yeah.
but whatever. So here's what people are saying. Obviously, the Vader's theme thing seems to imply that there's something more sinister happening here.
Right.
Another group on the internet said that his lightsaber is Vader's saber and not Anakin's saber. Now, I can't confirm or deny that. I can say that I did pause it, and I got as close to my TV as I could without destroying my eyeballs. And I looked at it as closely as I could, and I pulled up an image of a comparison between Vader's saber and Anakin's saber. And I'm telling you, it doesn't look like either of them. That's my impression of that. It's like it's too black to be Vader's saber, which has more silver,
Right.
and it's not silver enough to be Anakin's saber. So I genuinely don't know.
Okay, well, Force ghosts don't need lightsabers anyways. So what? I don't know. I'm so confused that why a Force ghost would even have a lightsaber.
Well, I guess he's maybe not a ghost.
Well, he's not. I guess he's a version of Fanakin in the World Between Worlds. I don't know.
Well, because like okay, so
if notice.
Listen, so let's if it connects the dead with the living.
Mm-hmm.
The impression is that this is dead Anakin speaking to somehow limboed Ahsoka, right?
Right.
Or it's all in her head, or it's a version of Anakin that's in the World Between Worlds from that era.
Well, yeah.
Talking to an older version of Ahsoka, and he's unaware. He doesn't know where he is, and is unaware of what's going on, and that's what's going on. And hand to heart, I truly don't know which version that they're going with, and I don't know which is better. I can't decide how I want them to go about this, like without it. What I don't want is for it to feel cheap and lame, and that she escaped death by Anakin somehow appearing in the World Between Worlds, his previous alive version, and pulling her out of the situation in some way. That seems too cheap and too similar to what Ezra did. And I don't necessarily like the idea. If it is a Force ghost, why doesn't he look like a Force ghost? You know, maybe because he's in World Between Worlds, and that form, that like ghostly form, isn't the form they take. What I do want is character exploration, and like this, like exploration of I thought I abandoned you, and he's like, well, I thought I abandoned you, and like something like or whatever. This exploration of their complex relationship as he turned to Darth Vader, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's a fascinating exploration, and something I would love to see, but it has to make sense, and I just don't know how it's going to make sense. It might not make sense, and that might piss me off.
Yeah, I don't know. It's I didn't notice the lightsaber is all I'm going to say, and it's complicated, but I guess we will see in the next episode. Like it's
it's the next big one. It's the big one for the season, right?
Yes,
so
yeah.
If honestly, if it's an episode that is just like entirely like flashback and conversations between Ahsoka and Anakin, I'm cool with that.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
I kind of wish that we got an episode that was just flashback stuff in Obi-Wan. We got one episode that had some of it to one moment, but I would have liked to see more. right? Show us the Clone Wars in live action again. Show us those, with the new version of those CG clones that look really good, and the actors that we know wearing their Clone Wars outfits with the with the armor bits and that kind of stuff. That might be fan service, and I might be wishing for fan service, but I think there is valuable character and story to mine out of using that kind of thing, and that would be really cool.
Oh, absolutely, so. Yeah, man. I don't know. I'm pumped. That's all
Me too.
I have to say. And I don't know. I know the World Between Worlds pissed a lot of people off before, but I just think this is a really good way to, I don't know, explain it a little bit more. And I think it's gonna be really cool to see it in live action, and we better see it in the next episode, because I'm gonna be mad if we're just like boopy doop boop. What's Hera doing?
Well, yeah, I don't. It's written and directed by Dave Filoni. Next week's episode. I don't think you tease this and then don't pick up on that.
Adam and I were talking that he's like, I would be fine even if the entire next episode is just Anakin and Ahsoka talking to each other in the World Between Worlds.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I just said. I mean, that's fine. I'm fine with that. That'd be.
Cool.
I would
just hang out here.
I don't know if everyone would be fine with that, but I would certainly be fine with that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't really have any more final thoughts on this. It's just really exciting episode. Lots of fun twists. Obviously, this sets up something really interesting for next week.
We might get to see a new galaxy next week too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It might take them longer than one episode to get there.
Yeah, I know, but we'll see.
Okay. Someone did calculations that presumably it would take them a couple weeks to get there.
People are crazy.
Because they're like, well, if with a Type 1 hyperdrive, you can get across the galaxy, the Star Wars galaxy, in approximately a day, then to cross the void, it would, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I don't know how they did it, but I'm okay with the idea of it taking a couple weeks to get to a different galaxy.
Sure.
All right. Well, on that note, any final thoughts?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, me neither. I think we've beat this dead horse to death, to butcher up an analogy. But this is absolutely really, really great episode. Really enjoyed it. Really fun to break down. Lots of question marks still to come to be answered.
Mm-hmm.
How much Thrawn are we going to get? How much Ezra are we going to get? How much Anakin are we going to get? All this stuff is still yet to play out. Will they get to the new galaxy and then be able to come back? Who knows? Time will tell. We'll be exploring it back on a regular schedule. So we are live Wednesday nights.
Yes.
Around 8:30 Central Time, and you can find us on Twitch and YouTube with those. If you want to kind of get engaged in the chat room or listen behind the scenes, you can do that in the Discord if you're a Patreon subscriber. In the recording studio channel, you can find that there. You can join that at any time you like. Follow us on Twitter at TowerBabbleCast, Facebook.com/TowerBabbleCast, and head over to the website, towerbabble.ca, to find everything we do. Until next week, may the Force be with you.